Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 391, The Millennial Cataclysm. Chapter 391, The Millennial Cataclysm. Tobitake Tonbo listened as the great Toad Sage spoke, spanning the ages from the era of Hagoromo to the modern day. He spoke of the children of destiny from the past and specific events that occurred within their fates. The sage was old, after all, and couldn't remember every single detail perfectly. In the future, there will be one final path of fate, and it will be the last time I prophesy a child of destiny. As the great Toad Sage spoke, he revealed a vital piece of information. The future fate? Tonbo asked. One more path of fate, is he talking about the Boruto era? This is something I foresaw 1,000 years ago, the great Toad Sage said. At that time, to deal with this millennial cataclysm, Hagoromo chose to divide his own power. Using Yin-Yang release, he created the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan and passed it down to his son, Indra, hoping that Indra would preserve this bloodline limit. The Sharingan was Hagoromo's doing. Tonbo knew the eyes belonged to the Sage of Six Paths' son, but he had no idea the Sharingan was specifically engineered for a purpose. He was a bit bewildered. Was the anime I watched all wrong? Shouldn't it be that Hagoromo's power couldn't be fully inherited through blood, causing it to degenerate? No, this was a trump card Hagoromo left for the shinobi world. The Sharingan is the eye that reflects the heart. If the world is on the brink of collapse and the host of the Sharingan is subjected to extreme stimulus, there is a chance the eyes will evolve capabilities to counter the threat. However, this probability only serves to increase the success rate of surviving the millennial cataclysm. Regarding the specific future of this catastrophe, my prophetic dreams have provided no confirmed hints. I only know it is the final disaster. Once it passes, the world will enter a state of true tranquility, and a child of the world will appear to shoulder the responsibility of saving existence. The great Toad Sage explained his precognitive abilities in detail, unveiling an ancient secret. I knew the evolutionary mechanism of the Sharingan felt much better designed than the Rinnegan's. So it was the Sage of Six Paths' hidden hand. This future sight. I definitely have to guard against it. It's like doing business right under someone's nose. Tonbo was deeply shaken. Damn. The great Toad Sage's prophecy was too accurate. The future child of the world had to be Boruto. Or maybe not, it could be Mitsuki or Sarada. Or perhaps the child of the world wasn't just one person. As a mature ninja, Tonbo maintained a healthy level of skepticism toward intelligence. He even wondered if the great Toad Sage was hiding something or if he was the true mastermind behind everything. He had read too many web novels, his mind was wandering. However, the power of the Sharingan was indeed exactly as the great Toad Sage described. Orochimaru's research data on the Sharingan aligned perfectly with this. Regarding this future cataclysm, can the three great sage regions cooperate with us? Tonbo asked. He had already obtained the intelligence regarding future sight. Now, the most important thing was this millennial cataclysm mentioned by the sage. He wanted more information, specifically, whether the sage regions had made preparations for this disaster. We have, but with little effect. We can only enhance our own strength. Some abilities are useless against the so-called future disaster. It seems the opponent's power blocks my future sight and the current telepathic wave abilities of the Ryuchi Cave. All we can do now is strengthen ourselves and provide support for the future, the great Toad Sage said slowly. Even with the power of the sages of the three great regions, they could only detect fragments. However, all three regions were prepared. Once a threat to the shinobi world appeared, they would unite with the ninja to eliminate it. This was why they offered summoning contracts to the ninja in the first place. They had no inherent obligation to help, they simply wanted to form an alliance through these contracts. But this was a secret known only to the sages of the three great regions. I see. Thank you for your guidance, great Toad Sage, Tonbo said. His plans for the future shifted once again. In short, the more information they had, the better they could prepare. You seem to know something about the future as well, which is why you came to consult me, isn't it? The power of the three great sage regions cannot resolve the future cataclysm. Ultimately, it depends on the strength of you ninja. You need to bolster your power. We can only offer some assistance, the sage noted. Tonbo replied, understood. We will all work hard. The enemy's abilities are indeed preposterous, but the side of victory will surely be ours. He believed this firmly. So what if they're Otsutsuki? So what if it's an omniscient god? Whatever ability they had, he would solve it. He would never allow his life to be destroyed. He was still young and didn't want to die yet. He was only in his 30s, with his current body, he could live for 200 or 300 years even without further modifications. If he used certain ninjutsu like Earth Grudge Fear or Reanimation, he could live indefinitely. He hadn't even explored everything in the shinobi world yet. He had only been to over 200 countries, there were still so many customs he hadn't seen. Let us hope so. If anything happens, you can notify me. Do you need a summoning contract for Mount Myaboku? You can sign one now so you can come here to discuss things anytime, Gamamaru offered. His speech was slow, but his intent was firm. No need. I'll just leave a coordinate here so I can come back whenever. Tanbo placed a flying Raijin mark on a nearby pillar. Mount Myaboku and the shinobi world were actually in the same dimension, not a separate pocket dimension, so the flying Raijin worked. It was more convenient than a summoning contract. Goodbye, Great Toad Sage. I'll come visit when I have time. After thanking him, Tanbo slowly walked out of the hall. Who was that just now? The Great Toad Sage tilted his head, already forgetting the man's name. Hey, what are you guys doing? Walking out of the gates, Tanbo saw Naruto and Hinata playing with something. As he got closer, he saw it was a massive plate of insects. Naruto hasn't had Mount Myaboku specialties in a long time, so I brought some for him to try. Do you want some, Tanbo-sensei? Gamakichi, in awe of Tanbo's prowess during the Fourth War, offered the plate of wriggling pupae to him. They were still moving. Naruto and Hinata's faces were currently pale. It made sense, given Gamakichi's size, the sheer volume of insects was staggering. Tanbo looked at the insects right in front of him. He could sense the rich nutrients within them. No wonder the toads here grew so large. No thanks. Just show me around the Toad Kingdom. I've been to many countries, but I've never seen a nation composed entirely of toads. Tanbo rejected the offer immediately. He was a human, not a toad. Chapter 392, The Toad Kingdom. Chapter 392, The Toad Kingdom. Ah, Tanbo-Ajisen, you're finished already. Seeing Toba take Tanbo, Naruto treated him like a way out of an awkward situation and rushed forward. He didn't want to eat those giant bugs. Gamakichi was truly something else, had it been so long since Naruto visited Mount Myaboku that the toad forgot he was a human. Hinata felt the same. She was afraid of those giant insects as well, so she walked quietly behind Naruto, clutching the corner of his cloak. Observing this, Gamakichi looked at the big bugs in his hand, and suddenly they didn't seem so appetizing anymore. In all these years, he still hadn't found a partner. Come on, I'll show you around the Toad Kingdom. I'm telling you, our kingdom is huge, and we have many things the shinobi world doesn't, like these delicious bugs. Gamakichi waved the insects in his hand boastfully. The food in the shinobi world was worlds apart from that of the Toad Kingdom. Thanks, Gamakichi. Next time, I'll treat you to some giant bugs, all right? They might not be as nutritious as yours, but they'll definitely taste better, Tanbo said to Gamakichi with a smile. His family ran a catering business, and he could certainly develop restaurants that specialized in food for summoned beasts to attract them to Konoha. He wanted to see if he could find any destined ninja to form contracts with them. Really? Gamakichi looked at Tanbo. But then he shook his head, humans were such tiny things. Even if the food was delicious, the portions would be so small they'd be dissolved by his saliva before he could even taste them. He wasn't a little toad anymore. With his current majestic and massive build, he wasn't suited for human-sized food. Perhaps Gamakichi would be a better fit, he was a slow grower. Haven't you heard of the World Ninja Association back in the Toad Kingdom? Inside, there are gourmet ninja who specifically collect ingredients and develop delicacies. As long as you have a request, it can be custom-made. And as it happens, I currently employ many one-star gourmet ninja to guarantee the quality of my catering chain. So, rest easy, Tanbo said. When it came to this, Tanbo was exceptionally confident. Being close to the water gives you the first view of the moon. Since he was the one who proposed the idea, he naturally had mature plans. When people started taking the exam for one-star gourmet ninja, he had already set his sights on that group to expand his catering empire. Although he could use ninjutsu to develop top-tier seasonings or pairing methods himself, it would consume too much energy. Thus, he paid a lot of money to hire people. A lot of money. After all, by improving cuisine slowly, he could make more money over time. If progress was too rapid, there would be nowhere left to go, and once people got bored, the food wouldn't sell. It was like mobile phones in his previous life, even a tiny improvement in appearance was enough to keep the manufacturers fed. So, he wasn't in a hurry. In a way, Ichiraku Catering had already become a giant corporation in the land of fire and beyond. Many people sought them out for cooperation. Developing the summoned beast market now was a perfectly viable move. Is that so? It's been a long time since I've been to the shinobi world. When you have time, Naruto, summon me so I can see the changes, Gamakichi said, tilting his head, finding the idea quite interesting. Having been away for so long, he was feeling a bit tempted. But for now, let's keep touring the Toad Kingdom. Temptation aside, Gamakichi still had to show them around. This was his nation and his home. Tanbo and the others followed behind Gamakichi, taking in the scenery of Mount Maiboku. Every now and then, a giant insect would pop out, only to be snapped up by Gamakichi. Occasionally, they saw other wild beasts, creatures with power comparable to Chunin or even Jonin, each with unique abilities. They were like the flying beast Tanbo had encountered when he took Niji's team out for training. They all possessed specialized powers. It's been a while. Mount Maiboku hasn't changed much, has it? Naruto, holding Hinata, leaped across giant leaves. He looked at the surroundings with a smile on his face. Years of constant studying had exhausted him. It was only since this honeymoon month started that he'd been able to relax. Hinata, meanwhile, clung to Naruto, her eyes fixed solely on him. She didn't even glance at the scenery. To her, Naruto was the most beautiful view. If this place were developed, it would be a tourist paradise. Tanbo thought as he looked at the environment. If this were his previous world, ticket sales would be explosive. Of course, but we won't open it up. This is the sacred land of toads and cannot be desecrated by too many people. Ninja are sometimes too despicable, Gamakichi remarked. Haha, true enough. The inherent flaws of humanity. Huh? What's that? Suddenly, Tanbo saw a massive mountain peak erupting with flows of lava. Black smoke billowed out periodically. Glowing red lava flowed down the mountainside, and there were many similar peaks. It was a cluster of volcanoes. Why did the Toad Kingdom have such an environment? Gamakichi explained, you mean the Flaming Mountains. That's where the flame toads live. They carry out their own training there. Every type of toad has its own way of training, so the environments differ. The Flaming Mountains. Tanbo thought of his hurricane phenomenon. His inspiration back then had come from the summoning technique that could kill an Otsutsuki parasite. So, it was here. No wonder he hadn't seen it in all these years. It made sense that Kashin Koji could summon the flames of Mount Maiboku's Flaming Mountains. Yeah, the Flaming Mountains are very powerful. Even among the specialized toads, only one flame toad can survive in the very center. The others use the natural energy flowing out from the mountains for their training, Gamakichi explained in detail. I see. Seems like a tough life. Seeing the Flaming Mountains gave Tanbo inspiration for training the younger generation. As a member of a collective society, he couldn't shoulder everything alone. The same applied to the threat of the Otsutsuki clan. Perhaps he could train some even more powerful ninja. Regarding such extreme environments, he recalled something he had taught during an ethics class at the Ninja Academy, the boy who was learning the 8 extremities. Perhaps he could cooperate with the Toad Kingdom. By utilizing their natural environments and the extreme conditions within Kagaya's dimensions, he could develop a super training system for taijutsu. Tucking this inspiration away in his mind, he continued to wander with Gamakichi. This is the training ground for the scroll toads. The sealing jutsus and rituals of the Toad Kingdom are all done by them. They reached an area where many small toads, whose bodies were shaped like scrolls, were learning from a larger scroll toad. They were drawing runic formulas on the scrolls that were part of their bodies. Boom. 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 After walking a bit longer, the sound of rumbling came from a distance. Looking toward the sound, they saw many toads attacking a pitch-black mountain face. Their hands were covered in armor. By the looks of it, they had been at it for more than just a day or two. This is the training ground for the iron-armed toads. That mountain is composed of a massive amount of minerals. It's very resilient. Chapter 393, Chapter 393, Thinking Snake. Chapter 393, Thinking Snake. They had observed the training of the toads in the Toad Kingdom. Tobitake Tanbo gained a lot of inspiration from it. Beyond specialized training for taijutsu ninja, other forms of training could be implemented. By establishing unique training grounds for specific types of drills, the results might be even better. Furthermore, the abilities of certain toads gave him flashes of insight. Just then, a massive chakra signature appeared within his perception range. Gamakichi, what is that? Tanbo suddenly pointed in one direction. A mountain range appeared in his mind. It rose and fell, marked with black spots across the ridges, and the mountain itself seemed to move, as if it were breathing. This mountain contained an immense amount of chakra. More than even Naruto. And natural energy saturated its body. Gamakichi replied, that is the great Iwaguma. He's the largest toad in the Toad Kingdom. Whatever you do, don't make him angry, or the entirety of Mount Maiboku will shake. It would definitely shake. Based on size alone, it was twice as large as Turtle Island. Just moving around randomly would cause tremors in the surrounding environment. No wonder there were no other living creatures nearby. Inside the great Iwaguma, Tanbo sensed a powerful aura of flames. It seemed this was a toad that utilized fire abilities. Incredible. Naruto stammered upon seeing it. Hinata felt the same. Through her Byakugan, all she saw was a dense, blinding mass of chakra. Naruto added, so that's the great Iwaguma. I've never summoned him before. He truly hadn't. The entity was simply too large, a summoner could usually only bring forth a portion of its body. This must be one of the core combat assets of the Toad Kingdom, Tanbo thought. Not surprising. Hey, Gamakichi, are you here to see me? Do you have any tasty bugs? I'm hungry. Just then, a voice drifted over. It hit their ears with deafening force, like a giant bell ringing right next to them, complete with echoes. Gamakichi patted the pocket behind his cloak and said, none, absolutely none. I'm taking guests on a tour, so I won't disturb you further. He then hurried to lead Tanbo and the others away. Wish. A colossal tongue shot out, sweeping past Gamakichi's body and dragging out a giant insect. Then it retracted. Just from seeing the tongue, Tanbo and the others felt as if a giant curtain had swept across their vision. Damn it. I knew I shouldn't have brought you guys this way. My prized big bug. Gamakichi was extremely annoyed. He had intended to hide it for a snack later. Then take us to where you catch them, we'll help you catch more, Naruto said confidently. Bugs of that quality are too rare. You can't just find them whenever you want, Gamakichi muttered dejectedly as they walked. Hey, when I have time, I'll take you to the Turtle Island in the Land of Lightning, Naruto offered, trying to cheer up his childhood companion. There are tons of big bugs there. Even the great Toad Sage called it a resort. When Naruto first went to Turtle Island, he genuinely thought the great Toad Sage's prophecy meant it was a vacation spot. Who would have thought it was an environment full of nothing but giant insects? Really? That's great. Gamakichi cheered up instantly. He had heard that the Land of Lightning had a turtle island filled with delicious bugs. Hearing Naruto's words, he was beyond excited. Tanbo watched their interaction, feeling a bit speechless. Gamakichi was celebrating too early. Naruto's honeymoon was almost over, where would he find the time to take a toad to the Land of Lightning? Once they returned to Konoha and Naruto entered his study period, he'd probably forget Gamakichi even existed. Only Tanbo knew just how heavy Naruto's study load was. Although Naruto's theoretical grades at the academy were much higher than in the original anime due to Tanbo's butterfly effect, he still only barely passed. He couldn't even beat Akamaru in a test. His foundation was too poor, a curriculum that Tanbo could master in a week might take Naruto a year. No wonder it took several more years in the original timeline before it was Naruto's turn to become Hokage. He deserved it. However, Naruto's capacity for theoretical learning was indeed a bit lacking. Gamakichi's happiness would last for a while at least, so Tanbo didn't burst his bubble. It's like working away from home, never tell your parents you're coming back the day before you arrive, that only gives them one day of happiness. Tell them a week in advance, and they'll be happy for a whole week. At least Gamakichi was getting some emotional value out of it. There wasn't much else of note in the Toad Kingdom after that, but the group had a good time. Naruto especially enjoyed it. He had never thought of bringing Hinata to Mount Myaboka for tourism, so he managed to kill two birds with one stone. The couple was genuinely happy. Naruto had indeed matured quite a bit. Goodbye then, Gamakichi. Wait for me to take you to Turtle Island. Naruto said to Gamakichi as he performed the summoning jutsu to wrap the three of them. Gamakichi beamed, goodbye, Naruto. Goodbye Hinata and Tanbo Ajisen. Poof. The three of them vanished. Gamakichi began to drool. It should be soon, right? Delicious bugs, supersized delicious bugs. And the special toad meals Tanbo mentioned. This is great. He decided he should visit the shinobi world more often. He heard things had changed a lot. Poof, poof, poof. The three reappeared at their original location. Naruto was still holding Hinata. Tanbo said, goodbye. Go back and keep studying hard, Naruto. Then he vanished before their eyes. Naruto froze. He remembered now. His honeymoon was over, and he had to return to those dark, bottomless days of studying. And he couldn't dodge it, his sense of responsibility wouldn't let him. His vision went dark as if infinite numbers were floating before his eyes. He felt as if the road home was no longer exciting but rather a path into endless darkness. Naruto, what's wrong? Hinata waved her hand in front of his face. It's nothing. Let's go back, Naruto said despondently. Poof. When Tobitake Tanbo reappeared, he was standing in front of the Technical Development Bureau. He headed straight for the District 13 laboratory. District 13 was protected by a powerful spatial barrier, space-time ninjutsu couldn't penetrate it. After a short while, he reached the lab. Click. The laboratory doors opened, and a long tunnel extended inward. You're back. That was fast. Just in time, I've come up with some ideas regarding the concept of sealing the future. Orochimaru set down his work and looked at Tanbo. Although Tanbo's future sealing idea was a bit ethereal, after half a day of contemplation, Orochimaru had found a few directions. Of course, they were just directions. All research required practice. That fast. Tanbo was shocked, fresh off his info-gathering trip to Mount Myaboku. Damn. He had been thinking about this for a long time. He had never think anyone develop a way to prevent precognition. Was he really going to have to develop a nature transformation from scratch to prevent an unknown ability? That sounds like Kekkei Mora level difficulty. Chapter 394, Chapter 394, Seize the Present. Chapter 394, Seize the Present. That fast. Tobitake Tanbo hadn't even had a chance to speak to Orochimaru before being stunned by his words. He then noticed that Kabuto wasn't in the lab at the moment. It made sense, at this hour, Kabuto should be tending to the orphanage. As the director, there were many things he had to do. Orochimaru continued, they are just some ideas. I can't guarantee they'll work, and the difficulty of implementation is, well, beyond the ordinary. The ideas were there, but the probability of completion was much lower than anything else he had ever researched. After all, it was a completely unknown direction. Even so, it's incredible. Tanbo was truly amazed. He had been pondering this for so long without a single clue. Even having read countless web novels in his previous life, the only solution he could think of was the concept of collapsing all timelines to achieve a complete counter, or perhaps some bizarre Cthulhu-like abilities. But those things weren't even viable as references. There was simply no possibility of manifesting them in the shinobi world. He felt he had been absorbing all existing knowledge in the world to the best of his ability, yet he was still shocked by the sheer difficulty. Now Orochimaru was telling him there were a few methods worth trying, it was almost too much to believe. Tell me about your side first. How did things go at Mount Myaboku? Orochimaru left him in suspense for a moment. Mount Myaboku, like Ryuchi Cave, was one of the 3 great sage regions and one of the most mysterious places in the shinobi world, possessing unknown powers. Even now, Orochimaru hadn't fully grasped the depths of the sage regions. However, he had gathered a wealth of information about them from ancient ruins and records left behind by those who had entered the sage regions in the past. Most of that intelligence had come from the White Snake Sage. It went okay, though a bit uneasy. Regarding the ability to foresee the future, I didn't find a direct solution. I just gathered a lot of information. I want to see if it can link up with your ideas to find a way forward. Tanbo recounted his experiences at Mount Myaboku, focusing primarily on the intelligence revealed by the Great Toad Sage. There might be some inspiration within those details that could lead to a breakthrough. Orochimaru didn't interrupt, he listened to Tanbo with a level of focus he had never shown before. Especially when he learned that the 3 great sage regions had been guiding the direction of the shinobi world since ancient times, he showed a look of, so that's how it is. It seemed there were quite a few people or forces guiding the world's path. The person he had discovered previously who was guiding history and modifying it wasn't from the sage regions, but that fellow called Black Zetsu. He knew that now. He wondered if there were any others like that in the shinobi world. Probably not. This tiny shinobi world couldn't take much more of that kind of meddling. So, the so-called millennial cataclysm is just Mount Myaboku's terminology, and they can't even get accurate information on it. The fact that someone in the future can block the Great Toad Sage's precognition means the enemy's power is not to be underestimated, Orochimaru said, his eyes gleaming. The methods we're looking for have only just started to provide a general direction, yet the opponent already has the ability to shield themselves from future sight. He hadn't expected the shinobi world to still hold so many secrets unknown to him. How interesting. He pondered the sage's words, that Jiraiya would be the one to guide the future child of destiny. Jiraiya's death in the Land of Rain wasn't because he couldn't escape, but because he didn't want to. Even if the Great Toad Sage predicted that this was the path with the highest probability of resolving the future crisis. Jiraiya, oh Jiraiya. Your whole life was spent on the road to saving the world. This world truly owes you. So, based on your guess, how much power do the 3 great sage regions actually have? I'm afraid they won't be able to solve the future crisis either. Do you have any good ideas? What Tanbo had to face wasn't just those who could see the future, but also Shirbai Otsutsuki, who had died in the shinobi world and was being studied. Although he didn't know much about Shirbai, he knew that a man named Amato Sanzo had researched him and developed many clones. That alone spoke to Shirbai's power. And if such a man was dead and being dissected, who knew what else was hidden in this world? Orochimaru looked at him. Why don't we do what needs to be done now before considering the future? Don't you think you're overthinking it? The matters at hand are more important than the future. Perhaps it's just your imagination. Or perhaps the Sasuke who traveled back is from a parallel world. Or maybe they are all clones created by a future enemy. Or perhaps the future enemy isn't as strong as we imagine, and the setbacks won't be as many as we fear. Everything is based on the Great Toad Sage's prophecy, the Sasuke from the future, and this Otsutsuki experimental subject. Even the newly discovered Otsutsuki ruins across the world don't explicitly prove how powerful they are. I feel that with your current strength, you might be able to solve all the Otsutsuki yourself. As a researcher, Orochimaru was wary of groundless speculation. Yet, he also loved it. Research, after all, starts with a hypothesis before moving to practical study to develop that guess. He found Tonbo's crisis a bit amusing. With Tonbo's current strength, he could handle incredibly powerful enemies. According to his deductions, even if Kaguya escaped her seal right now, Tonbo would have a way to seal her back up. It's fine to worry about the future, but don't go overboard. Tonbo was stunned by Orochimaru's words. It was true, his mental state lately had been a bit problematic. It seemed that with the end of the canonical war and the loss of his spoiler knowledge, he had become uneasy, constantly overthinking and imagining enemies that were too powerful. He was effectively just piling pressure on himself. There was no need for it. Even if he died, so what? It wasn't like he hadn't died before. Death is but a momentary thing. As long as he did his best, it was enough. Thank you. As expected of the Sannin, Orochimaru. You've snapped me out of it. I have indeed been a bit anxious lately. I'll make sure to adjust myself, Tonbo said gratefully. Orochimaru smiled. I didn't do it for you. It's just that if you're in this state, it's no good for our plans, is it? True. An anxious, rushed person is not a good collaborator. You're right. From now on, I'll just do my best. Whether it can be done, or whether I've overprepared, that's a problem for the future. Tonbo felt enlightened. But preparation still had to be made. If he could avoid dying, he would. Who wants to cut their life short? He was just thinking more clearly now, and his heart felt much lighter. He realized he had been neglecting Ayam and the others lately, having not enjoyed a peaceful life in quite a while. Kakashi's way of releasing pressure was reading Make Out Paradise. Might Guy's way was training. And his way of decompressing was enjoying life with his family and finding joy in the everyday. How could he have forgotten? What did he do in the early years? He lived his life, trained Naruto, Kiba, and Hana. He taught the kids at the Ninja Academy and experienced their vitality. It's good that you've cleared your head. Now, let's talk about the ideas for sealing the future. Chapter 395, Genjutsu Resistance. Chapter 395, Genjutsu Resistance. In my understanding, there is nothing that cannot be changed. The only thing in the world that remains constant is change itself, and the future is no different. Using this as a baseline, the future itself possesses infinite variations. Every prophecy of the Great Toad Sage has been sufficiently accurate, which suggests that this change itself can be perceived. Perhaps the members of the Otsutsuki clan can perceive it as well. What we need to target is their perception itself. Point 1. We can become so strong that we don't need to prevent the future. However, if the enemy can see the future, they might simply wait for those of us capable of stopping them to die before attacking the shinobi world. This was the simplest, most crude method. As long as the shinobi world continued to produce people capable of defeating the enemy, there would be no problem. Point 2, and this is the most important point, to foresee the future, one must observe a person. Since observation is required, it means there is a point of contact. Orochimaru smiled faintly. Of course, the opponent might use a divination-style precognition, which is different from the Great Toad Sage's prophetic dreams. That would remove the direct observation step. But it's unlikely they use object-based divination, which only yields partial information because of the medium involved. That would introduce even more variables into the future. If they use that method, we simply need to follow our plan, hide our strength and intelligence well, and we can naturally create more variables in the future. Tobitake Tonbo nodded. Orochimaru's logic was sound. If future sight was like the Great Toad Sages, it definitely involved some form of observation. If there were ninjutsu to counter observation, they could start there. Orochimaru continued, the opponent might also elevate their consciousness to a certain dimension, entering future time to watch the development of events from a God's eye perspective. If that's the case, we must act as if the opponent is constantly watching us, as if someone is staring at us right now. Hearing this, Tonbo felt a chill run down his spine. He released his perception, wanting to see if it were true. It wasn't impossible, after all, time travel had already happened. As Orochimaru laid out these ideas, Tonbo felt that if given enough time, he too could create a corresponding ninjutsu. His talent was decent, but in terms of sheer inspiration, he couldn't compare to Orochimaru or certain others. There was no helping it, nobody is perfect. Though he was a transmigrator, he didn't have a system. He had to rely entirely on his own brain. This situation of not knowing the future plot was truly uncomfortable. He missed the feeling of knowing exactly what happened in Shippuden. But these guesses don't quite achieve the goal of preventing future sight, do they? Tanbo asked. His objective hadn't been met yet. He knew Kashin Koji's ability was to see all timelines, though that all was subject to skepticism. According to existing basic theory, timelines are infinite. The opponent's ability likely allowed them to see the most probable segments among all timelines. If someone's power truly allowed them to see through everything, Shirbai Otsutsuki wouldn't have died. Even if he did, he wouldn't have left his remains in the shinobi world. Perhaps the purpose of leaving his remains was because he saw future timelines where he would be resurrected. For instance, if the Otsutsuki themselves had some flaw that required this type of death to start anew. Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that Shirbai Otsutsuki truly could see every timeline. After all, aren't omniscient and omnipotent gods common enough? But was it actually possible? If he could really do that, Tanbo didn't care anymore. He had done his best. That wouldn't be a problem solvable by human effort. Orochimaru opened the database for Urashiki Otsutsuki and pulled up a long list of data. Hey, of course. I wouldn't be so superficial, you should have thought of such simple things long ago. What I want to discuss is the physical and genetic information of the Otsutsuki clan. We have cracked it to this extent. According to current data, their bodies are not fundamentally different from us ninja, their life level is simply higher. They haven't reached a point that defies theoretical traces. And this is my key point, the observation of the future. The first method of defense is to strengthen your Genjutsu abilities. Force anyone observing you to fall into your Genjutsu, thereby defending against their observation. This ability would require you to keep it active at all times, without a moment's pause. Orochimaru chuckled. And to do this, we must use the Otsutsuki clan's data as a starting point to find relevant triggers. We must bypass their Genjutsu defenses so they cannot crack your technique, thus creating a barrier against future sight. The difficulty lies in how different Urashiki's data is from other Otsutsuki. If the difference is too vast, the Genjutsu might fail. However, I speculate the probability of that is low. Though Otsutsuki evolved by eating the fruit of the god tree, which might create differences, it's a manageable risk. We can take that gamble. Orochimaru had also researched the Ten Tails and the god tree. Combined with the intelligence from Naruto and Tanbo regarding Kagaya and Otsutsuki evolution, he could deduce certain patterns. Tanbo was stunned. Damn. This guy's analysis seemed flawless. Visual-based Genjutsu works on the principle that if you observe, you're caught. It all depended on whether his own Genjutsu could affect an Otsutsuki. If the Genjutsu was strong enough, he could use it to block the opponent's future sight. At the very least, even if the Genjutsu only controlled them for a few minutes or seconds, it would cause them to doubt themselves or introduce more variables. By then, the effectiveness of future sight would be greatly diminished. But he also saw the difficulty. Their current research hadn't reached the point of fully deconstructing an Otsutsuki's physical data, they only had a partial understanding of genetic information. Furthermore, his own five senses Genjutsu didn't have a massive effect on Otsutsuki. Previously, against Kagaya, it had only bought a tiny amount of time. Trying to control an omniscient being like Shirbai Otsutsuki would likely be difficult. Kashin Koji was on the side of the shinobi world, so he wasn't worried about him, he was worried about the deceased Shirbai Otsutsuki. After all, everything in the future might be part of a resurrection process the opponent already foresaw. No one knew. Or perhaps there were enemies even stronger than Shirbai. Or perhaps Shirbai's soul had ascended to become a four-dimensional being. There were many possibilities. The best-case scenario was that the Otsutsuki was truly dead, leaving only a husk behind. In that case, he could certainly handle the clones created by Amato Sanzu. He had confidence in that. He just feared the worst-case scenario. Chapter 396, Chapter 396, Autograph. Chapter 396, Autograph. The second method, I heard you have a ninjutsu that can transmit memories directly into an opponent's brain. If you can redevelop that and make it stronger, I think it would be even more useful than Genjutsu, Orochimaru continued. That is indeed a bit more practical than the Genjutsu approach, Tobitake Tanbo nodded. However, that sealing jutsu couldn't function like Genjutsu, which triggers the moment a target looks at you. It still required the act of sealing. While he knew how to convert that sealing jutsu into an actual visual-type Genjutsu, memories transmitted by himself could never exceed the limit of what the opponent could withstand. The storage capacity of a human brain is finite, and the Otsutsuki were no exception. Even if one were an omniscient and omnipotent god, if they were subjected to an excessive amount of memory data, they might cease to be themselves. It was just like the fantasy gods he had read about in his previous life. So what if they had a godhead, a divine office, or divinity? If they accepted too much faith, they would eventually lose their original self. The same logic applied here. If the Otsutsuki's future sight truly functioned by observing the future to predict it, the opponent might not be able to withstand a massive onslaught of information, leading to brain death. At the very least, it could trigger a defensive mechanism in the opponent's brain, causing them to ignore his existence because he represented a threat. This way, their future sight might simply omit him, leading to inaccurate predictions. Orochimaru truly had an abundance of ideas. Is there anything else? Tanbo wanted to know just how much more was inside that head. Sealing Jutsu. Lately, I've been studying yin-yang release, Orochimaru said. I can certainly develop a powerful sealing jutsu. I believe I can complete this task, though I might be restricted in my movements at that time, but that's fine. I just won't go out as much. Sealing jutsu and barrier techniques could isolate anything. He had the confidence to develop one. One should never underestimate a man who seeks the ultimate truth. If possible, he even wanted to study these powerful enemies. He hoped they wouldn't disappoint him. Orochimaru didn't care about the state of the shinobi world, he was more interested in researching the unknown. I'll leave the sealing jutsu to you then. I'll try the other methods. Regardless, increasing the variables is enough, Tanbo replied, feeling satisfied. Sealing jutsu had always been the meta choice. However, his talent in that field was truly mediocre. He could only rely on Orochimaru to develop a countermeasure. This was only half a day's work, Orochimaru might come up with even more methods in the future. Konoha. The Ninja Academy. What? Today, the 3-star honor ninja, Captain Tanbo, the Deputy Director of the Technical Development Bureau, is coming to the Ninja Academy for an inspection. And he's checking to see if the school lacks anything. The school teachers exclaimed in shock upon hearing Irika's words. Captain Tanbo was a legendary ninja, one of the top combat powers of the Shinobi Alliance. Furthermore, he possessed immense political wisdom, allowing the Alliance and Konoha to develop and prosper. His suggestions alone had caused Konoha's growth to outstrip everyone else's. The worship of powerful ninja led the teachers to overlook even the achievements of people like Kakashi. The reason Irika was the one speaking was because Naruto's wedding coincided with his promotion to Dean of Students. At that time, Kakashi had pulled some strings to postpone his assessment. Now, he was officially the dean. Standing nearby, Ebisu looked at Irika with intense envy. He, an elite teacher, had actually fallen behind Tobitake Tanbo's apprentice. To see his pupil ascend to the dean's seat before him was beyond painful. Irika continued, yes. Sensei says that although the shinobi world has entered an era of peace, the strength of ninja must still be trained. One lives in sorrow and dies in happiness. We cannot stop moving forward. These ninja had also learned of the Otsutsuki's existence. Over the last 2 years, due to Kagaya Otsutsuki, the Shinobi Alliance had conducted investigations everywhere. They knew the Otsutsuki weren't natives of the shinobi world but powerful beings from other planets. Their goal was to absorb the world's natural energy to evolve. The Ruin Ninja, of the Ninja Association, upon learning this, had sprouted up like bamboo shoots after rain, scurrying across the world just to find Otsutsuki ruins. That was the shortcut to becoming a 2-star or 3-star ninja. In this era, who didn't want to reach the pinnacle of the 3-star rank? Information on Otsutsuki ruins was slowly surfacing through their incremental development. So, while peace had arrived, the training of ninja had not decreased, only the wars between nations had stopped. One lives in sorrow and dies in happiness. What a famous quote. As expected of Tanbo. Why can't I say things like that? Ebisu felt a bit miserable listening to Irika. They were students of the same generation, yet Tobitake Tanbo had become such a ninja, while he was merely a 1-star intellectual ninja. Teaching and raising children was hard. Even an elite teacher like him was only a 1-star intellectual. What a failure. He was even worse in other fields. He had originally been promoted to special jonin based solely on education. That was only because teaching elsewhere couldn't compare to Konoha, so he had benefited from the environment. Of course, Sensei is indeed incredible. I still have much to learn, Irika smiled. Irika-san, since Captain Tanbo is your teacher, could you help me get an autograph? One of the teachers asked. There were many new teachers at the academy. Not everyone had seen the legendary ninja in person. An autograph would be great. This autograph culture made Ebisu feel even worse. He was Tanbo's classmate. Why didn't they ask him? Wait. Since even other teachers are so interested in Tanbo's autograph, could I use his signature to entice the students to study harder? Ebisu suddenly thought. Previously, Irika had used the 8 cents of fire to threaten students into studying, and it was very effective. Could he use other methods to induce students to learn? This was a core pedagogical method, you just had to get the direction right. It was much better than threats. Ebisu actually had a few of Tanbo's autographs. He had originally intended to use them to pick up girls and find a wife. Now, maybe they could serve a better purpose. If it worked, he could surpass Irika and become the new dean. He was so brilliant. But he couldn't let Irika know. Irika could get autographs too. Ebisu watched Irika sneakily, terrified that his inner thoughts would be discovered. Of course. But you can just ask him yourself later. He's very approachable and usually doesn't refuse people, Irika said. Tanbo-sensei generally wouldn't say no. Because he used the multi-shadow clone jutsu, giving out autographs was too simple. Irika truly envied his teacher's ability to create so many clones, just like Naruto. Chapter 397, Chapter 397, The New Ninja Academy. Chapter 397, The New Ninja Academy. When you wake up tomorrow morning, your world will still be perfect. Tobitake Tanbo rose from his bed and looked at the weather outside the window. Outside, the sky looked as if a miraculous painter had brushed it with a myriad of colors. Against the azure backdrop, clouds floated like clumps of cotton candy, sometimes gathering, sometimes dispersing, as if performing a silent play. Sunlight spilled through the gaps in the clouds, forming pillars of golden light that illuminated the earth and Tanbo's focused eyes, seemingly inviting him to explore this mysterious and beautiful world. I'll go inspect the Ninja Academy today and see what needs to be arranged. As it happened, Kigo Tobitake was nearing school age. Once this current term of home study concluded, he would enter the academy to learn. Because Tanbo knew he had lost his previous advantage of knowing the plot, his heart had been fraught with anxiety. Now, he had cleared his head. Therefore, aside from his daily research and training, he planned to spend most of his time living a normal life and doing relaxing things. Today, he would inspect the academy and begin preparing specialized training grounds to enhance the strength of future ninja. This was a spontaneous idea that arose after his trip to Mount Maiboku. The current ninja academy already possessed a Genjutsu training system, so they weren't lacking in combat experience. All that remained was to elevate their fundamental power, taijutsu, chakra, spiritual energy. Using the Eye of the Creator technique to have the toothbrush and towel clean him up, Tanbo cast a glance at the soundly sleeping Iam before leaving the room and heading toward the ninja academy. Little one, Daddy is really working hard, hee. Once Kigo goes to school, I'll be at ease. Letting him stay with that gloomy fellow all the time. I can't imagine what your big brother would turn into after a while. Iam opened her eyes and stroked her belly, talking to herself. She had met Kigo's teacher, Orochimaru, and felt his gaze was a bit sinister. If she didn't trust her husband, she would never have let Kigo follow such a teacher. Now that he was about to start school, she finally felt a bit relieved. At least by playing with friends his own age, he wouldn't turn out like that. Achoo. Orochimaru was contemplating the expansion of his next project when he suddenly sneezed. He wiped his nose. It seems someone is thinking of me. Could it be you, Jiraiya? He thought about it and realized there wasn't much about him worth being missed. The only person likely to nag about him was probably Jiraiya in the Pure Land. If it weren't for the Great Toad Sage's prophecy, he would definitely drag Jiraiya out of the Pure Land just to ask if he was gossiping behind his back. As for Tsunade, impossible, she was likely off traveling in some foreign country or gambling. She had left Shizen single, and Kakashi hadn't even taken notice of her yet. Achoo. In a far-off foreign land, Tsunade had just stepped out of a casino looking dejected when she let out a loud sneeze. Damn it, which brat is talking about me? It made me lose a huge sum of money, Tsunade grumbled. She had lost all her cash again. Tsunade-sama, please wait a moment. Just as she was about to leave, a voice called out. It was a very gentlemanly-looking man wearing a morning coat, a top hat, holding a walking stick, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, and sporting a friendly smile. Tsunade, You know me. Of course. Allow me to introduce myself formally. I am the General Manager of Weiling Pharmaceutical Company, Limited, Natsum Yujin. Here is my business card. Natsum Yujin handed over the card. Tsunade took it impatiently. You want something? She asked directly after reading it. Natsum Yujin, you must have lost all your money in there. It just so happens our company's recently developed drug requires a superb medical ninja to provide guidance on our product. Tsunade-sama is exactly the 2-star medical ninja certified by the Ninja Association that we need. We will pay you a very generous remuneration. Tsunade's expression soured when he mentioned her losing money, but her spirit instantly lifted at the mention of being paid. This wasn't the old ninja era anymore, she couldn't just use transformation jutsu to fool people. Every casino now hired specialized ninja to prevent chakra cheating and debt jumping. Even if they couldn't beat her, they could apply to Konoha for debt collection, which would be very embarrassing. After all, she was Konoha's 5th Hokage. Very well, I'm interested in what you said. Lead the way. Tsunade wasn't worried about any conspiracies. She had absolute confidence in her strength as a former Hokage. Natsum Yujin smiled. That's wonderful. With your guidance, our product will surely complete its mission. It was as if he had received the perfect answer. he performed a gentleman's bow. As Tsunade walked ahead, he pressed down on his hat, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. Walking through the campus, looking at the children full of vitality, Tobitake Tanbo thought back to his own school days. Back then, he wasn't this energetic. But Guy and Ebisu certainly were. The brisk air of youth brushed against him. In the blink of an eye, he was over 30 and about to be a father of 4. These are the first-year students currently doing physical training. Tanbo-senpai must not have seen this in a long time. The teacher leading the way was visibly excited. Damn, I'm actually the one leading Captain Tanbo on a school tour. This is great. Look at me. Body flicker jutsu. My transformation jutsu, I'll turn into a puppy and bite your butt. Ah. Teacher, he is trying to bite my butt. Can I punch him? A group of children in the distance suddenly broke formation and started fooling around. Hey, don't. The lead teacher tried to stop them. Wait, no need. This is how children should be, full of life. Tanbo stopped him. Kids playing and fighting were just being kids. Those like Itachi Uchiha or Kakashi were the exceptions. Even Kakashi had his moments of fooling around with Guy. Hey. Left hook, 1,300 times. In another area, rhythmic shouts could be heard. Good. Not bad. Next is 1,500 leg kicks. Then came the voice of Might Guy. Tanbo looked toward the sound and saw Might Guy teaching the children taijutsu. Is Guy passing on his youth to the next generation already? This was an important decision made by Konoha after witnessing the power and necessity of Guy's taijutsu, the establishment of a taijutsu class. It was designed specifically to train powerful taijutsu ninja to prevent situations where ninjutsu proved useless. As for senjutsu, there was currently no possibility of popularizing that. Yo. Tanbo. Are you here to watch our youthful training as well? Guy sensed someone approaching and immediately greeted Tanbo loudly. The little radishes in front of him followed his gaze and looked over. Chapter 398, Chapter 398, Self-Healing Technology, Guy. Chapter 398, Self-Healing Technology, Guy. Wow, it's Captain Tanbo. It's the director of the Technical Development Bureau. He's the deputy director. Anyway, he's super strong. I heard he's a 3-star ninja of the Ninja Association. Is his taijutsu as good as Guy-sensei's? Let's go take a look. The little radishes, as the young students were called, began chattering excitedly upon seeing Tobitake Tanbo. Driven by childhood curiosity and boundless energy, they rushed toward him, wanting to see what a legendary ninja truly looked like. Might Guy felt helpless but could only let them stop their training for a moment. Children needed that kind of vitality, and besides, it really had been a long time since he had seen Tanbo, aside from a brief glimpse at Naruto's wedding. Wow, that spiky white hair is so cool, one girl remarked. And she wasn't the only one. Hearing this, Tobitake Tanbo straightened his posture slightly. What beautiful eyes. Is this a legendary ninja? Tanbo tilted his chin up a fraction. Good eye, kid. But can he break a big tree with one punch like Guy-sensei? Bam. Rumble. As soon as the words were spoken, a massive crater appeared in the school grounds. Tanbo lightly brushed off his hands. Breaking a tree. Too low level. Ah. Captain Tanbo is incredible. He crushed the ground with one punch. What a huge hole. Even Guy-sensei couldn't do that, right? The children cried out in shock at the sight of the crater. How could such a small fist create such a massive hole? Might Guy walked forward, staring into the deep pit, lost in thought. This playground cost a lot of money to build, Tanbo. Even if you're rich, you shouldn't teach the kids to do this. Hearing this, the children understood. Their eyes turned toward Tobitake Tanbo. What now? Usually, if they did even a small thing wrong, they had to put themselves through intense physical training as punishment. Tanbo let out a dry cough. This is where the utility of ninjutsu comes in. If your ninjutsu isn't great in the future, don't follow my example. His hands blurred through a series of seals. He slapped his palm onto the ground. The massive crater rapidly filled and restored itself until the surface was perfectly smooth, exactly as it had been before. Amazing. Damn, my chakra control is poor, otherwise I'd learn ninjutsu. It's way cooler than taijutsu. Yeah, if I knew that move, my crush would definitely like me. Seeing this magical scene, the children's eyes were filled with envy. However, they were specialized students recruited specifically for the taijutsu class because their innate chakra control was poor. They could only look on with longing. Seeing the envy in their eyes, Tanbo felt a bit awkward. He had forgotten he was showing off in front of kids who struggled with the very thing he just did. Children. No need to envy him. That is simply his youth. We have our own youth. Might Guy suddenly declared. He flashed his legendary pearly white teeth, something Tanbo hadn't seen in ages. Yes, Guy-sensei. That is someone else's youth, we have our own youth. The children's blood began to boil, instantly fired up by Guy's infectious passion. Tanbo gave Guy a thumbs up. If it were him, he'd probably have to use Genjutsu to stir up that much motivation. It proved that Guy had put immense effort into his teaching methods. So, Tanbo, why are you at the school? Don't tell me you want to be a teacher too. Are you quitting as deputy director? Guy asked after calming the kids down. Tanbo had been so busy lately he was like a ghost, seeing him here made Guy wonder if he was looking for a career change. Tanbo was speechless. Deputy director? Can't you just call me director? Not quite. Though it wouldn't hurt to teach a class occasionally. I mainly came to inspect the construction of the school and see if the children have run into any difficulties in their learning process. There shouldn't be many difficulties. Under the leadership of my lifelong rival, Kakashi, the school system and general arrangements are much better than before. Just look at this, we've even opened a taijutsu class, which is a major development for these kids' futures as ninja. Guy thought for a moment and felt that the ninja academy didn't really need further improvements. Everything was thriving. He couldn't think of any flaws. Suddenly. Wait. There is one thing. Tanbo, that self-healing ninjutsu of yours. Could you develop it into a scientific ninja tool? One where you just inject chakra and nutrients and it works. Guy had suddenly hit upon a problem. There really was something the school lacked. When he visited 1010, he realized how useful ninja tools had become. He wondered if Tanbo's self-healing technique, or the medical ninjutsu from the hospital, could be applied to a tool. That way, all students could use it without having to go to the Konoha hospital every time. Taijutsu ninja, in particular, suffered immense physical wear and tear. Guy remembered when he used to spar with Tanbo, Tanbo had a secret medicine and a self-healing jutsu that allowed the body to recover perfectly. It was much better than his own family's secret ointment. Even though Guy had given his family's recipe to the school, it still didn't feel like enough. Tanbo stared at Guy's head, looking suspicious. What? Is it too difficult? Guy asked, scratching his head in confusion. If it's too hard, don't worry about it. The current facilities are enough. It's just a pity the kids can't use better stuff. It's not that, Tanbo teased with a smirk. I'm just wondering when your brain became so sharp. Is this actually an idea you came up with? You haven't been reincarnated by Orochimaru, have you? Tanbo actually already had a plan for this, but hearing Guy suggest it caught him off guard. Guy wasn't stupid, but he usually wasn't the type to come up with technical R&D ideas. Are you talking about that disgusting, squishy fellow? I'm not him. I am a hard-boiled man. Guy shouted, thinking of Orochimaru, who often hung around Konoha and occasionally sprawled out like a lizard in the sun. He couldn't remember the guy's name half the time, but he remembered the creepy vibe. That's right. Guy-sensei is a hard-boiled man, the children chimed in. Wait, can it really be developed? Guy's gears turned again as he realized Tanbo's tone was affirmative. He turned back to the kids, haha. You guys are in luck. The school's Genjutsu training system was developed by him. If he says it's no problem, it's definitely happening. You'll all become stronger than me. He believed in Tanbo's ability implicitly. Tanbo, it will just take a bit of time. It's not actually that difficult for me. It could be on the market within the next 6 months to a year. He already had the blueprints in mind. If he didn't have so many other responsibilities, he could do it even faster. With Orochimaru and Kabuto in his lab, a project of this difficulty was child's play compared to researching the ability to seal the future. Chapter 399, Chapter 399, Potential Development. Chapter 399, Potential Development. Is that so? That's truly wonderful. Hearing this, Guy flashed a brilliant smile. Rock Lee had already grown up, and now it was time to look toward the new generation of junior ninja. If they had better conditions, they would surely achieve even greater things, especially since Guy knew exactly how strong Tobite Tanbo was. Tanbo was simply too brilliant. Don't worry, I'll have everything ready. I'll get Kakashi to cooperate with me, even though he's the Hokage, he'll listen. I heard you've already qualified as a 1-star intellectual ninja. I didn't see that coming, you actually have a knack for this, Tanbo said to Guy after finishing some of the planning talk. An intellectual ninja was a title awarded to those dedicated to teaching and nurturing others. One needed to make significant contributions to the education of the younger generation and have produced outstanding disciples. It seemed that due to the achievements of Niji, Lee, and Tenten, combined with his contributions to taijutsu, Guy had actually managed to earn the 1-star intellectual title. The thought of a future filled with green spandex everywhere made Tanbo shudder slightly. He didn't discriminate against fashion, but still. Yeah. Guy-sensei is a one-star intellectual ninja. My dad said only very smart people can become one, a student chirped. Hearing this, Guy held his head high, his youth appearing more vibrant than ever. By the way, besides the development of the scientific ninja tool I mentioned, I'm also planning to create a taijutsu training system specifically designed to train a ninja's physical techniques, Tanbo told Guy. A taijutsu training system. Is it something like the Genjutsu training system? Guy's eyes lit up. To a taijutsu specialist, this sounded like a godsend. It's different. The taijutsu training system is designed to enhance a ninja's physical durability and strengthen their techniques. This system will include the self-healing scientific ninja tool we discussed. When the time comes for development, I'll need help from you and Lee to test the system and provide your most direct feedback. Tanbo spoke with purpose. Taijutsu was a vital project for increasing the shinobi world's foundation against the Otsutsuki, and he intended to develop it heavily. With a powerful physical base combined with the amplification of the 8 inner gates, the new generation would surpass Guy by a wide margin. Imagine a future where an enemy appears with the ability to absorb ninjutsu, only for a group of taijutsu ninja to step forward, each opening the gate of death. It would be magnificent. With Orochimaru's research, he might even be able to let them open the gate of death without dying. They would be literal war machines. No problem. Just hearing about it makes my blood boil. I'll make sure Lee and Niji come to experience it as well, Guy said, his excitement reaching a fever pitch. He wished the development was finished right now. The lead teacher nearby listened, feeling that the Ninja Academy was about to undergo yet another transformation. Wait, I have to fight for a spot in this. This could mean a new position, which translated to a promotion and a raise. He heard that the ninja teachers currently managing the Genjutsu training system had all been promoted. Though most were still chunin on paper, their salaries had reached the level of jonin due to the system's importance and the various benefits involved. The lead teacher was green with envy. Hearing this news, he felt he finally had something to strive for. Tanbo sensed his emotions but said nothing. Everyone would have to work for it, he wouldn't be handing out shortcuts. Well then, that's it for today. We'll catch up properly another time. I'm going to look at the rest of the school. Besides the taijutsu system, what else could be developed within the academy? The school was massive now. It took Tanbo a long time just to do one lap. However, he wasn't in a rush. This was his time to enjoy a leisurely pace and reduce his stress. Otherwise, as Orochimaru warned, his heart would become too anxious, causing him to lose his cool. Watching the children train, play, and get scolded by their teachers helped Tanbo release a lot of pressure. Much of his stress was indeed born from unnecessary imagination. Tanbo understood this, but understanding didn't mean he could let go of it completely. He wasn't a god, nor was he some invincible protagonist from a web novel. He was just a ninja with talent and ideas. He was human. And humans have their own burdens. Sometimes Tanbo truly wished he had a cheat or a system that gave him things for free. It would be much better than having to rely on this brain. No matter how good a brain is, it has limits. For example, without Orochimaru, it would have taken him a long time to come up with ways to counter future sight. If he had a system, it would probably have shielded him automatically. That's how the novels usually went. The changes to the Ninja Academy were profound. Since the Fourth War and the establishment of the World Ninja Association, the rise of construction ninja had made school layouts more efficient, concise, and professional. The design was far superior to the old days. Some aspects even looked like futuristic technology, things that even his previous world couldn't achieve, yet were performed perfectly through the use of chakra. The principal's office was now highly digitized, located in a high-rise building equipped with elevators, screens, and surveillance. It was a total super school. Subjects like Genjutsu, nature transformation, and Kekkei Genkai development can now be integrated into the academy curriculum. It wasn't that these didn't exist before, but the courses were sparse, merely giving students a brief overview. Regarding Genjutsu, Tanbo planned to personally compile a Genjutsu encyclopedia for the teachers to study. While taijutsu countered the Otsutsuki's ability to absorb chakra, it was too one-dimensional. They needed support from ninjutsu-type ninja. After all, if an enemy hid in another dimension, a taijutsu ninja would be useless regardless of their strength. Tanbo-senpai, Irika-sensei, and the others are waiting for you. Shall we? The lead teacher prompted. They were already at the administrative wing. Let's go in. I'll ask Irika and the others if they have any suggestions. I want to fully develop the potential of the Ninja Academy. Tanbo strode inside. Fully develop the potential of the Ninja Academy? The lead teacher was puzzled. Could the school's potential be developed even further? Was it even necessary? Development everywhere in Konoha required massive investment and funding, and this wasn't an era of war. Wait, what am I thinking? If the school's potential is developed, doesn't that mean my room for promotion increases? Just like how Irika-sensei became the dean. The lead teacher hurried to catch up, a look of excitement plastered on his face. Chapter 400, 8 Extremities. Chapter 400, 8 Extremities. The Ninja Academy. The Administrative Office. Tanbo-sensei, long time no see. Irika's face lit up with joy the moment he saw Toba take Tanbo. He rushed forward immediately to greet him. It really had been a long time. Tanbo was busy, and ever since Irika became the dean of students, he had been swamped as well. It wasn't just his teacher he hadn't seen, he hadn't even had time to chat with his former teammates and classmates like Togtake Tatusen and Shinobu Mibu. Long time no see, Irika. You've become the dean, not bad. Keep working hard, Tanbo said, patting his shoulder appreciatively. Of his 3 disciples, Irika was the most outstanding. Wait, second out of 3 is actually. Tanbo cleared his throat mentally. And Ebisu, long time no see. I heard you wanted to test for the dean position too. Did you pass? Tanbo turned to Ebisu, his tone teasing. Ebisu's face turned bright red. Humph. I'm only giving Irika face for your sake. I'll take the position later. Haha, I get it, Tanbo laughed. Ebisu shifted the subject. I heard you came to inspect the academy. Weren't you supposed to be retired? Why are you still doing so much work? He kept hearing about this retirement, but it never felt like Tanbo was actually retired. Whether intentionally or not, Tanbo was still deeply involved in the construction of Konoha. It was almost ridiculous. Retirement just means not doing a job, so you can do the things you actually enjoy. I am an inheritor of the will of fire, passing that will down to the next generation is something I enjoy, Tanbo replied. Right now, he wanted to use these small tasks to alleviate his mental stress. Developing the Ninja Academy was a perfect outlet. Irika asked, Sensei, what brings you here specifically this time? He knew about the inspection, but not the specific objective. I want to see if the academy has any other needs. I'd like to get some input from you all. Tanbo knew he couldn't micromanage everything. As soon as the topic was raised, the room buzzed with energy. This was a legendary ninja they were talking to. Teachers other than Irika vied to voice their opinions, hoping to leave a good impression. I believe the analyzers used for trajectory calculations in the Shuriken Jutsu curriculum still have room for improvement. The Ninja Trap course has become outdated, we need to design a new syllabus. Regarding the chakra courses, due to Tanbo-senpai's new training methods, the students' chakra control is much stronger than before. Many existing lessons are now lagging behind and need a comprehensive adjustment. The issues were numerous across all sectors. Kakashi hadn't managed to finalize the adjustments for the academy yet because Konoha was simply too busy. Tanbo was startled by what he saw. Even with Shikamaru and Shizune helping, Kakashi had a mountain of documents to process every day, and he still wasn't finishing them. The rapid development of the village had created so much work it nearly turned Kakashi into a literal ninja dog from exhaustion. This was despite the assistance of various support ninja and his use of shadow clones. Fortunately, Kakashi's IQ was far beyond Naruto's, so he handled things beautifully. He even managed to find small windows of time to read Make Out Paradise. If it had been Naruto, even with Shikamaru's help, he would have been worked to the bone. You've all made very good points. Tanbo committed everything to memory. Indeed, his own chakra control methods had rendered the old taijutsu training incompatible. It wasn't that the quality had dropped, but rather that the curriculum couldn't keep up. With improved chakra control, the difficulty of all other courses naturally decreased. If they didn't raise the bar, the efficiency of the training would stagnate. After a while, Tanbo finished gathering their suggestions and prepared to start working. Sensei, an autograph first, please. Irika was not at all shy as he handed over a photograph. It was a particularly handsome shot of Tanbo. Following his lead, the other teachers swarmed forward. Their children were fans of Tanbo, and the teachers didn't stop them, mostly because they were fans themselves. Even Ebisu handed one over, but it wasn't one or two, it was a whole stack. Tanbo looked at him, speechless. Ebisu, what's the deal? You think I'm a signature machine? Please sign them. I have a use for them, Ebisu said, thick-skinned despite his blushing face. The next dean is definitely going to be me. Several pens flew out, controlled by chakra threads, signing the photos for everyone. This display of skill stunned them, the pens were writing all by themselves. The meeting at the academy ended, but Tanbo's work didn't. He visited various classrooms to observe the students' lessons. Time passed quickly. However, things were changing elsewhere, specifically, Kagaya's dimensions. Tanbo began his renovation of the various spaces. His first goal was to transform them into ideal training grounds for taijutsu ninja. Kagaya's dimensions were perfect for this. There was ice, desert, water, and various vacuum-like spaces. He perfectly constructed specialized training zones. Additionally, a large valley was designated as a training site. He began modifying these environments: extreme cold, scorching heat, swamps, lightning, gravity, unknown biological threats, soil-less zones, and lifeless voids. Various concepts flourished around Tanbo's ideas. He didn't just limit himself to Kagaya's dimensions, he looked at terrains found in the shinobi world as well, such as the Flaming Mountains, the Valley of Sighing Breezes, and various islands where summoned beasts resided. These were all his canvases. He wanted to use his power to develop these places into super training grounds for ninja. However, he didn't spend all his time on this. These tasks served as a change of pace while he pursued his primary goal, developing his own abilities. His Genjutsu needed an upgrade, specifically targeted at the Otsutsuki. He also needed to become more familiar with the Otsutsuki physiology. Development of the Infinite Void upgrade was also underway. This technique had been his early trump card, though it was technically a type of sealing jutsu. Now, he wanted to turn it into a persistent field or, as Orochimaru suggested, a fixed location defense to counter potential future sight. Fixing it to one location was relatively easy, ensuring it remained effective against the enemy was the challenge. Tanbo didn't want a simple solution. He needed to develop the technique to be even more powerful without it disrupting his daily life. The 8 extremities technique, there's a chance I can develop it. Shira from the Hidden Sand is now a jonin, and his taijutsu is excellent. Maybe I can find him to gather some training data. Shira's 7 Heavenl's breathing method and Gai's 8 inner gates were both formidable taijutsu styles. Both could be used for experimentation. His ultimate goal was to recreate the taijutsu he thought was the coolest when he was a kid. It was his way of paying homage to a classic. Chapter 401, Legend, Magazine. Chapter 401, Legend, Magazine. A massive airship rose above Konoha. Standing inside, Tobitake Tanbo watched the scenery retreat behind him with a look of leisure. Most of his preparatory work was complete. Now, he was heading to the Hidden Sand Village. He intended to exchange ideas with the taijutsu ninja there. To develop a more powerful taijutsu system, he needed more experience. Although Tanbo had researched the ninja physique deeply, it didn't mean he knew everything. The utility of chakra was infinite, he had only uncovered a small fraction of its potential. Like Einstein not knowing every facet of mathematics, Tanbo had his limits. They were both simply geniuses. The reason he chose an airship this time was because he usually relied on flying Raijin to travel, which caused him to miss too much scenery. Furthermore, visiting another village required a sense of formality. Otherwise, people might misinterpret your intentions. One always had to be prepared. It hadn't been many years since the Fourth Great Ninja War. Many people still suffered from ninja syndrome, and that wouldn't change anytime soon. Just as Konoha wouldn't abandon traditional ninja training, neither would other villages. The scenery along the way was beautiful. The airship flew beneath the clouds, above was the white tufted sky, and below was a carpet of green. Row upon row of buildings extended outward from Konoha. Occasionally, birds could be seen landing on branches to feed their fledglings. Rivers meandered through the landscape, twisting into the shape of a 6 in Tanbo's vision before flowing toward the distant sea. On the main roads, horse carriages, both traditional and new chakra-powered models, sped along. Huge changes, and they're all thanks to me. These changes were indeed largely due to his efforts. The establishment of the World Ninja Association allowed ninja to apply the power of chakra to everyday life. Such a shift was monumental for the world. Lifestyle ninjutsu had become mainstream, and ninjutsu in all sectors flourished. Even many minor secret techniques had emerged, they might not be powerful in combat, but they each had their use. In less than a day, the airship traveled from Konoha to the Hidden Sand. Yellow sand filled the horizon, but compared to the desert of the past, it looked much better now. Many sand-blocking plants had been planted, reducing the intensity of the wind and dust. Clearly, the Hidden Sand had been diligent in its environmental management. Ninja could occasionally be seen using ninjutsu to treat the desert soil, much like a chef seasoning food. Welcome to the Hidden Sand Village, 3-star honor ninja, Captain Tanbo. It's been a long time. Gaara greeted him, accompanied by Kankuro and a purple-haired man. This was Shira. Since Temari was currently in Konoha being affectionate with Shikamaru, Gaara's guard had changed. However, Tanbo was slightly surprised to see Shira in the role of a personal guard. Kazekage, long time no see. Sorry for the trouble during this visit, Tanbo said. When he visited the sand, he always stated his purpose directly. In fact, after the establishment of the World Ninja Association, all powerful ninja were required to report their movements when visiting other nations. While this meant their movements were known, it significantly reduced the risk of war. Gaara nodded. This is Shira, the person you wanted to meet. His taijutsu is the best in my village, he is also my taijutsu instructor. Shira looked toward Tanbo. He had heard that this legendary figure was also a top-tier taijutsu master, someone who once used pure physical strength to kick back the shell of the Ten Tails. His eyes burned with excitement. "Hello, Tanbo-senpai. I've heard much about you. May I spar with you in taijutsu?" Shira didn't stand on ceremony, he was direct. Perhaps it was a common trait among taijutsu ninja, straight to the point. Kankuro smirked. "Hey, you better be careful. Shira is our hidden sand taijutsu instructor. Watch out, or you'll get a foot to the face. He's incredibly strong. Once you're done sparring, I want to challenge you too." Kankuro's face was full of pride. He secretly hoped Shira would land a kick on Tanbo's face. The Ninja Association Tanbo founded had rejected Kankuro 12 times now, he still hadn't met the requirements for the one-star puppet ninja title. But he was close. His new puppet was about to be completed, and his weaponry was undergoing rapid iteration. "Sure, we should spar. It's the best way to get a feel for things," Tanbo laughed. This was exactly why he had come. Gaara said, "I'll take you all outside. The village can't withstand the impact of your battle." This wasn't the Chunin exams. He raised his hand, and sand lifted the group off the ground, flying them toward the outskirts of the village. "Whoa, who is that?" The Kazekage is greeting him personally. And Lord Kankuro and Lord Shira are with him too. Isn't Kankuro-sama's new giant puppet almost finished? How does he have time for this? That's not like him, he's the man who failed the one-star puppet ninja exam 12 times. You're dead meat. That's Kankuro-sama's nightmare. Careful he doesn't give you a hard time later. I heard that giant puppet is called a mecha. I wonder how strong it is. Regardless of how strong it is, the person he's greeting must be a high-ranking official from another village. The other passengers from the airship and the sand ninja were astonished to see the Kazekage's personal reception. The hidden sand was very busy these days. It was rumored that Gaara's dark circles, which had almost faded, were back because of the massive workload. He was arguably the hardest working Kage among the 5 great villages. However, someone soon found the visitor familiar and pulled a magazine from their waist. Found him. It's Captain Tanbo, 2-star battlefield ninja, 3-star honor ninja, 3-star Genjutsu ninja, director of the Konoha Technical Development Bureau, the man who recorded all the imagery of the war. The magazine was a product of the news report. It featured spreads showcasing the cruelty of war, using images paired with text to educate the public. The photos in this magazine were taken by Tobitake Tanbo himself, and it included his portrait. No one expected that while fighting a war, this man was already acting as a journalist to capture those moments. What? Why didn't I recognize him just now? Damn it, my autograph, someone grumbled in regret. The others felt the same. He was one of the few 3-star certified ninja in the world, a true global hero. Why is he here? Maybe he has some new suggestions to implement. While they chatted, a single eyeball observed the scene. A clump of sand on the ground formed into a palm-sized tanuki. Going out to play without notifying me, Shikaku. Damn it. And after I've been working so hard as a sealing jutsu teacher at the Ninja Academy. Whoosh. After grumbling, Shikaku dissolved into sand and vanished. He wanted to see what Gaara and that Tobitake Tanbo were up to. Chapter 402, 7 Heavenly Breaths. Chapter 402, 7 Heavenly Breaths. The vast, boundless desert. Violent winds howled as they swept across the landscape, kicking up yellow sand that filled the sky like a herd of stampeding wild horses. Tiny grains of sand, caught in the wind's embrace, swirled recklessly in the air to form curtains of yellow that blotted out the sun. They struck mercilessly against Tobitake Tanbo and the others. However, no one paid much mind to this light dusting of sand. It wasn't a full-blown sandstorm. Even if it were, they had a master of sand manipulation right there to block it. Furthermore, given everyone's strength, they had nothing to fear. When it comes to taijutsu combat, even if he is Captain Tanbo, he's bound to lose against Shira. Kankuro held absolute confidence in Shira's physical techniques. Currently, no ninja in the hidden sand had been able to defeat Shira in taijutsu. Some taijutsu practitioners from foreign lands had even come to challenge this one-star taijutsu ninja, a man who had created his own style and foundational theories. That man was Shira. They had all fallen at Shira's hands, one after another. This once again proved the authority of the Ninja Association's star-ranking titles. Within the same framework, no one could best the current Shira in taijutsu. Maybe those 2 guys in the green spandex from Konoha have a chance. Kankuro recalled the man who had pushed Gaara into a corner during the Chunin exams years ago, and the one who later punched away Gaara's sand with ease. As for Tobitake Tanbo, while legend spoke of his powerful taijutsu, Kankuro's primary impression of him was still his genjutsu, especially the techniques he displayed during the Fourth War and the 5 sound-based genjutsu tools he carried. Punch him, punch him, punch him. Kankuro thought of his own failed one-star puppet ninja exams and couldn't help but draw mental circles to curse the man. Gaara watched Shira, whose face was being pelted by the wind and sand. Do not underestimate him. He is a hero of the shinobi world. While his taijutsu is only a matter of legend, as a jonin, he won't be lacking. Not to mention, his purpose for coming here is to gain inspiration from our village's taijutsu practitioners. No jonin was weak in taijutsu, let alone a legendary hero. A genjutsu-type ninja's taijutsu wouldn't be lacking either. In the past, a genjutsu suggestion applied by Tobitake Tanbo had silently influenced everyone in the world. It caused them to focus their attention primarily on Tanbo's genjutsu and his current political status. Kankuro replied, I won't underestimate him, but taijutsu is Shira's specialty. There won't be any problem. He had faith in Shira. Boom. As they discussed, the two below finally made their move. In an instant, they collided. Not bad. It's been a long time since I've had a fight. Show me what you've got. As long as you don't die, I can bring you back, Tanbo said as he felt the power in Shira's strikes. During their initial exchange, Tanbo didn't use his full strength. Currently, his taijutsu foundations already exceeded Guy's, unless Guy opened the 8 inner gates. As for Shira, while he was a taijutsu genius on par with Guy and had even developed his own exclusive style, he was still quite young. At 20, Shira had yet to reach his prime. Furthermore, the Hidden Sands development of taijutsu ninja wasn't as advanced as Konoha's. They had only recently begun systematic training, largely modeled after Konoha. They lacked the abundance of secret medicinal ointments and supplements available in Konoha, which meant Shira's physical foundation currently lagged behind even Rock Lee's. Veins bulged on Shira's forehead. His feet pressed into the ground, leaving deep imprints in the sand. His gaze was exceptionally focused. So this is a legendary ninja's taijutsu, so strong. As an expert, Shira could feel the immense pressure emanating from Tanbo after just a simple contact. Contrary to the legends of him being purely a genjutsu-type ninja, his taijutsu was unexpectedly formidable. Bang. 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 As the collisions intensified, Shira began deploying his developed techniques, such as his silent fist. He grew more alarmed the longer they fought. His silent fist was useless. He could eliminate sound, but he couldn't eliminate chakra. Against a genjutsu-type ninja, who are mostly sensory types, it did nothing. Moreover, his physical strength was being completely suppressed by Tanbo. Shira felt a growing sense of powerlessness. 7 heavenly breaths, first activation. Second activation. Third activation. Fifth. Boom. Shira quickly found he couldn't keep up using pure combat technique. It was obvious that Tanbo was holding back, merely wanting to observe his abilities. Thus, Shira stopped hiding his trump card. His body erupted with a yellow glow as chakra surged through his system. A massive amount of air was sucked into his lungs. Under the effect of the 7 heavenly breaths, his cells began to activate. His skin, muscles, and face turned a deep red. I'm coming, Tanbo-senpai, he called out politely. Tanbo nodded. This was exactly what he wanted to see. Truly impressive. This method of activation is quite different from the Reikage. Pow. Shira vanished instantly. A tunnel was carved through the yellow sand as he charged straight at Tobitake Tanbo. There it is, Shira's 7 heavenly breaths. And he jumped straight to the 5th activation, Kankuro noted, watching the glowing Shira. That's it, punch him. He had been sweating for Shira just a moment ago. He hadn't expected Tanbo's taijutsu to be this powerful. Wasn't he a genjutsu type? He had been careless, constantly overlooking the fact that Tanbo's taijutsu was strong enough to kick back the Ten-Tails shell. I really want to see Captain Tanbo's full strength, Gaara lamented. He had been caught in the infinite Tsukuyomi back then and hadn't witnessed Tanbo's full power. He's definitely strong, but I'm confident I could beat him, Kankuro said boldly. I'm a puppeteer. As long as I can block his sensory ninjutsu and hide inside a puppet, surrounding myself with layers of defenses, he wouldn't be my match. Especially with my new mecha puppet. It's peerless. I'll be a 1-star puppet ninja soon, maybe even 2-star. Gaara looked at him, somewhat speechless. Brother, for all we know, we might already be caught in his genjutsu. Are you sure you can beat him? Genjutsu. When did we get caught? Kankuro jumped, immediately performing a genjutsu release manual sign. He found no trace of a technique. He looked left and right, finding nothing unusual. Gaara sighed and rubbed his forehead. Haven't you noticed? Look at his taijutsu now, and think back to before. We always tend to overlook his physical skills and focus solely on his genjutsu. It's as if the presence of his ninjutsu and taijutsu data has been weakened, forcing our attention to center only on his genjutsu. And there was no way to release it. It was as if what they were under wasn't genjutsu at all. Even if their minds wandered, they immediately veered back. If they weren't specifically talking about it now, their focus on Tobitake Tanbo would quickly shift back to his genjutsu, his politics, or his business acumen. His ninjutsu and taijutsu would simply fade into the background. Chapter 403, Chapter 403, Easily Resolved. Chapter 403, Easily Resolved. What? Kankuro was instantly stunned by Gaara's words. However, being an elite ninja, he quickly recalled his past memories of Tobitake Tanbo and realized that things were exactly as Gaara described. Even now, while clearly watching Tanbo fight Shira, he couldn't help but feel that Tanbo's ability shouldn't be enough to defeat Shira. Yet, looking at the actual state of the battle, Tanbo was clearly holding back. In the past, the man hadn't deliberately hidden his information, so why did everyone always overlook this point? This was the man who could use taijutsu to physically suppress the shell of the Ten Tails. How could he possibly be weak? Damn, since when has this been happening? How did he do it? Kankuro felt a lingering fear after the realization hit him. Fortunately, they had entered the era of the Shinobi Alliance, and things were relatively peaceful. If this were the old era of war, he would have been left without a place to be buried. I don't know. I only know we've definitely fallen for his trick, and it's likely been going on for a long time. I just don't know when he pulled it off. As expected of a legend in the ceiling of Genjutsu, he's truly formidable. Gaara pondered for a long time but couldn't find a single flaw. Furthermore, he felt as though he wasn't currently under a Genjutsu at all. While they discussed this terrifying matter, the battle below was reaching its climax. Having activated the 7 Heavenly Breath's 5th activation, Shira was finally able to trade blows with Tanbo. It was clear that Tanbo was now showing a bit of his true skill. Hey, these guys are definitely playing around. A spar, huh? That taijutsu isn't bad, but it's a bit like bullying a child. Shikaku quietly emerged from the ground, watching the two fight. Only he truly knew that Tanbo's taijutsu was on par with, or perhaps even exceeded, that of a Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. And right now, Tanbo wasn't even going all out with his physical techniques. Bang. 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 Boom. The wind and sand grew more violent. Shira's taijutsu was causing the environment itself to shift. However, unlike the 8 inner gates, his style didn't feature massive area of effect attacks. He focused more on pinpoint, single-target strikes. His attacks were silent and traceless. But in the end, it was still taijutsu, and Tanbo responded with ease. Boom. A massive sand pit appeared. The shockwaves from their attacks kicked up a gale, blowing back the encroaching sandstorm. Air cannons fired off frequently, nearly hitting the spying Shikaku on several occasions. Damn, the power of ninja is getting more and more ridiculous, Shikaku muttered. He felt like the number of ninja capable of beating him was growing by the day. Luckily, it was a time of peace and a consensus had been reached with the ninja. Pow. Another air cannon blast. Shira, unable to hold on any longer at the 5th activation, pushed into the 6th. His purple hair stood on end like a hedgehog's, and a yellow aura radiated from him, compressing the surrounding air. His physical form even began to undergo slight changes. Holy crap, are you a Super Saiyan? Tanbo joked internally upon seeing this. The resemblance was uncanny. Phantasm Taijutsu. Tanbo stepped up his game, a black film manifesting over his body. Boom. Bang. 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 This was the kind of taijutsu he wanted to see. Shira was indeed a genius. To develop taijutsu to this level alone was incredible, perhaps he truly could help Tanbo develop a stronger system. Tanbo's current body could also be considered a taijutsu masterpiece, superactive cells, immense vitality, and incredible adaptability. However, when using the 8 inner gates, his naturally massive chakra became too difficult to control, which didn't fit his tactical combat style. Swoosh. Thud. Let's end the spar here. Let's talk business, Tanbo said, sending Shira flying with a punch before using Genjutsu to force him out of the breathing state. Shira's cell activity slowly began to drop. Using the god tree from the infinite Tsukuyomi, Tanbo had planted neural threads in everyone in the world. He had already fully deciphered the operational flow of Shira's taijutsu, so finding a way to catch him in a genjutsu was natural. Hey, I also wanted to, never mind. I was going to ask, why did you come to the sand to learn taijutsu? Does Konoha not have any decent taijutsu left? Kankuro had originally wanted to spar with Tanbo too, but he couldn't exactly spar using puppetry. Given that taijutsu displayed just now, he'd have a hard time, let alone dealing with genjutsu or ninjutsu. No, I'm developing a taijutsu training system, and I need various types of taijutsu knowledge to supplement it. I also need medical knowledge and secret medicines, though Konoha is the strongest in that field, so I just need the specific taijutsu styles of the other villages. Tanbo's goal wasn't limited to the hidden sand. Gaara asked, a taijutsu training system. Is it like the Genjutsu training system at the Konoha Academy? The hidden sand had been eyeing that for a long time and had even sent people to experience it. It was a remarkable system. More or less. But if the Genjutsu system trains combat experience, the software of a ninja, then the Taijutsu system trains the hardware. In the future, this system will become the ultimate goal for all Taijutsu ninja, Tanbo explained. Kankuro chimed in, the ultimate goal. Shira has almost reached his peak. If he opens the 7th activation of his 7 heavenly breaths, he might even be stronger than Gaara. Stronger than Gaara, that meant rising above the level of the 5 Kage. Though the sacrifice would be great, it didn't diminish the achievement of the technique. I know. But when the Taijutsu training system I envision is complete, it will surpass the achievements of all ninja in history, and perhaps even exceed Naruto's power. Tanbo used Naruto as the benchmark. Exceed Naruto's power? That sounded ridiculous. Everyone knew that Naruto, Sasuke, and Tobitake Tanbo represented the strongest forces in the world. Claiming that Taijutsu alone could surpass Naruto seemed like boasting. However, Shira was deeply interested. Kazekage-sama, I believe Tanbo-senpai's words. I'm very interested in achieving such a goal. What do I need to do? As long as the Kazekage hands you over to me and contributes some Taijutsu research data, this training system will be open to the hidden sand as well. Besides force, there had to be mutual benefit. Otherwise, who would do the grunt work for you? Kankuro asked suspiciously, that sounds too good to be true. This sounds like a massive project. Won't it take a long time to develop? Even copying Konoha's school system was taking them forever. A project of this scale would surely take a massive amount of time. Of course. Everything takes time, doesn't it? Tanbo replied. Gaara said, I also want to know if Tanbo-senpai's research can truly reach the level you claim. I will speak with the village elders. Thank you. I won't bother you further. When the project is officially launched, I'll come for my recruit. Now, I need to head to the hidden cloud, they're the true Taijutsu experts. At least rest for a bit and look around, Gaara suggested. The sand has changed quite a bit, and our customs are very different from Konoha's. Chapter 404, Kabutak. Chapter 404, Kabutak. In the end, Tobitake Tanbo decided to spend some time wandering through the hidden sand village to experience its unique local flavor. In truth, there wasn't much local flavor left that he hadn't seen. He still had shadow clones stationed in the sand, though he hadn't dispelled them yet to receive their accumulated experiences. It was a nice change for his original body to experience things firsthand rather than relying on the memories of a clone. It had to be said that the development of the hidden sand was deeply intertwined with Konoha. Many of their advancements had been borrowed or adapted from Konoha's templates. They were following the lead of the most advanced. This is. Tanbo soon came across a massive factory. The area it occupied was even larger than his own technical development bureau. However, while the scale was grand, the buildings were quite sparsely distributed, which was a stark contrast to Konoha's dense layout. Perhaps this was simply the result of having vast land with few people. In the desert, space was the one thing they weren't lacking. Here, Tanbo saw numerous puppet manufacturing plants. They specialized in mass-producing puppet components, which were then sent elsewhere for assembly. It was a remarkably advanced operation. This is our Hidden Sand Puppet Development Bureau. It will continue to expand until it surpasses your Konoha, Kankuro said proudly. It was already larger than Konoha's Technical Development Bureau. In Kankuro's mind, total world leadership was only a matter of time. It had to be noted that since the establishment of the Ninja Association, an incredible amount of puppet-making talent had emerged. Many retired veterans couldn't resist joining in to help develop new designs. This collaborative environment had sparked a technological boom. Unlike the old days, where ninja hid their techniques for fear that an exposed trump card meant a death sentence, the current era of peace allowed researchers to focus solely on science. For puppet enthusiasts, it was a golden age. Ah, Kankuro. Your mecha has entered the final phase. Do you want to give it a test run? Just then, an elderly man out for a stroll spotted them and walked over. It was Ebizo. With the world changing so rapidly, even he couldn't stay in seclusion, he wanted to see the new world for himself. Kankuro's face lit up with joy. What perfect timing. I'm definitely going to test it. Do you all want to see my ultimate achievement? He asked Tanbo and the others. Let's have a look. I'm curious about the Sans puppet development, Tanbo said. Gaara nodded and followed behind the eager Kankuro. Wait for this, old man, my body isn't what it used to be. Ebizo trailed behind step by step, watching the young men pull ahead. The youth today are so much more energetic than in my day. Sister, did you see that? The shinobi world has finally entered peace. Ninja can actually discuss their vital jutsu with one another. Compared to the old days when everything was hidden in the desert, this is truly wonderful. Ah, sister, you're in the Pure Land, so you probably can't see this. But I'll be joining you soon enough. When I do, I'll make sure to learn everything about these changes so I can report back to you. Ebizo's eyes sparkled with the wonder of a child looking at a lollipop. Inside a massive building within the Puppet Development Bureau, Tonbo's eyes immediately landed on a puppet as large as the Nine Tails. Well, a mecha. The giant Kabutak. When Tonbo saw the shape of that mecha, his vision nearly went dark. How can it look so much like that? Ha ha ha. Cool, right? I specifically used a red, custom-made anti-chakra paint. And those big eyes, I modeled them after Shikaku's. The legs use the Hidden Sand's most advanced tech, it can roll on wheels or walk on feet. Kankuro looked at the mecha with intense excitement, showing it off to Tonbo. Hey, Captain Tonbo, what's wrong? Seeing Tonbo staring blankly at the mecha, Kankuro thought he was struck speechless by awe and waved a hand in front of his face. No, I just didn't expect you to have this kind of talent. Was this your idea? Tonbo felt even worse being called Captain Tonbo in front of this thing. Kankuro scoffed. What do you mean, this kind of talent? Is there anyone in the world with more puppet talent than me? I'm the world's #1 puppeteer. Right. The #1 puppeteer, who can't even pass the 1-star exam, Tonbo retorted. Kankuro's face darkened. That's just because the Ninja Association standards are too high. Once this puppet is complete, I'll be a 1-star puppeteer for sure, maybe even 2-star. Unlikely. At a glance, it's not fully refined yet. You still have a long way to go. But the idea isn't bad. Making puppets giant-sized is interesting, though I wonder if your chakra is enough to control it. While technology in the shinobi world was decent, puppets still relied on chakra threads for manipulation. Giant puppets hadn't been popularized before because, aside from the massive cost and questionable combat efficiency, the chakra requirement was the biggest hurdle. Controlling something that size was beyond most people. Hey, did you forget the inspiration your son gave us during our village exchange? He suggested using the chakra devices from the Land of Snow to store and accumulate chakra. With that, I can focus on precision control. I don't need to have a chakra pool as massive as Gaara's, Kankuro explained, looking even more smug. This wouldn't stop a genius like him. Is that so? I don't recall that. I must not have been involved, Tonbo mused. He realized he must have been busy researching Kagaya's dimensions at the time. Besides, it wasn't exactly top-secret information, his son had already mastered the Land of Snow's technology long ago. He wondered how an Otsutsuki would deal with a mecha. They probably could. After all, he had heard that Sasuke's Susanoo had been pierced right through by a single kick from a certain opponent. He knew the defensive power of a Susanoo well, and this mecha wasn't even in the same league. For now, it probably wasn't enough to challenge the top-tier threats, though its raw defense likely rivaled a first-stage Susanoo. I'm going to test it out. You guys wait here, Kankuro said, unable to wait any longer. Nearby, many working ninja were looking at the mecha with excitement, slowly clearing away the scaffolding and supports surrounding it. They greeted Kankuro as he approached. Thought you went to meet Captain Tonbo. You really couldn't wait, could you? It's just finished, come and give it a try. Kankuro leaped up to the mecha's chest area. Let's show them what I can do. He connected his chakra to the internal device. A hatch opened in the chest, and he stepped inside. He was determined to steal the spotlight today. Chapter 405, Chapter 405, Cooperation. Chapter 405, Cooperation. Rumble. The massive mecha began to slowly start up. In reality, it wasn't truly slow, it was just that in the eyes of these powerful shinobi, its speed left much to be desired. The wheels of the mecha began to shift, transforming into a pair of colossal legs as the giant machine stood upright. Not bad. Judging by the commotion, its defensive and offensive capability should both be superior to his previous work, Tobitake Tonbo remarked, sensing the mecha's movements. It seems Kankuro has made real progress over the years. I suppose he might just become a 3-star puppet ninja in the future. Boom. 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 Right then, powerful air currents erupted from the mecha's legs and back, lifting the entire machine into the air. However, it started off quite wobbly, looking as if it might plummet from the sky at any moment. Gaara had already gathered his sand, prepared to catch it, but Kankuro ultimately managed to stabilize the machine. Kankuro's voice echoed from inside, ha ha ha. Cool, right? My puppet can fly too, and it doesn't even consume that much chakra. Roar. 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 The chakra consumption might have been low, but the noise it generated was definitely a public nuisance, at least to Tonbo and the others listening below. Gaara noted, this is its first operational run, so there are likely still many issues. Watching Kankuro excitedly pilot the mecha out toward the desert beyond the village, Gaara added, let's go up and take a look as well. Tobitake Tanbo took off directly into the air without deploying any visible ninjutsu, as if flight were second nature to him. Seeing this, Gaara was reminded of Naruto's method of flight. Has he acquired that kind of power too? He guessed correctly. Tanbo had already extracted data from Kagaya's body revealing that all Otsutsuki possessed the innate ability to fly. Utilizing this information, he had developed a method for free flight. In truth, it was merely a specific application of Een release, so the difficulty wasn't exceptionally high. Whoosh! Gaara quickly caught up, and it didn't take long for them to overtake the machine. Kankuro was still piloting somewhat precariously. However, proving his merit as a genius puppeteer, he quickly found his bearings and adjusted the controls. The mecha accelerated and stabilized. Tanbo flew alongside the machine. Looking at its design, he had to admit that the phrase, "a man's romance," wasn't just talk. Any man laying eyes on this would feel their blood pump. Giant mechas truly were inherently cool. However, its aesthetic slightly resembled Kabutak from his previous life, which made him feel a bit awkward. Although he had grown accustomed to his own moniker, Captain Tanbo, adding a Kabutak lookalike triggered his old sense of second-hand embarrassment, especially now that he had reached his current age. Ha ha ha. Pretty slick, right, Captain Tanbo? Sensing Tanbo's presence, Kankuro's voice boomed from the cockpit. It's cool, alright, but watch your front. Tanbo warned. Right ahead lay a massive sand dune. The mecha plowed straight into it, scattering the dune into a cloud of swirling yellow sand. Thud. The giant machine lost its balance and tumbled onto the desert floor. Damn it. Kankuro muttered, forcing the mecha back onto its feet. It was clear he was growing much more proficient. Bang. Bang. As if to vent his frustration, ports opened on the mecha's hands, firing projectiles forward and triggering violent explosions. They were clearly chakra cannons, a type of scientific chakra tool. Kankuro proceeded to run several more tests. By the end of it, Tanbo reached a definitive conclusion. Mecha assessment. Strengths, high offensive power, incredible defensive capabilities. The specialized paint coating can block sensory perception and offers formidable resistance against ninjutsu. Weaknesses, poor mobility, completely lacks any ability to restrict an enemy's movement. If Tanbo had to fight it, he could easily find a countermeasure, even back when he was just a chunin. However, winning wouldn't be guaranteed. His Chunin-era self would have found that special paint quite a handful, or rather, might not have been able to crack it at all. Though Kankuro was often criticized by many, he was still undeniably an elite jonin with plenty of combat experience. Before long, the mecha suddenly shut down and slumped over. Kankuro climbed out, looking slightly embarrassed in front of Gaara and Tanbo. The mecha is still a bit weak right now and hasn't been perfected, but it will definitely qualify me as a one-star puppet ninja. Kankuro was well aware of his creation's strengths and weaknesses. Against high-level shinobi, it really wasn't enough yet. Keep it up, a one-star ranking is definitely within reach, Tanbo encouraged. By the way, do you have any intention of exporting that specialized paint? I feel like Konoha really needs something like that. It would be incredibly useful for us. Tanbo had taken a liking to the paint. It could be applied to various Konoha facilities and utilized in research laboratories to construct highly resistant materials. Damn it, Kankuro muttered, instantly realizing that the other men had zero interest in his actual mecha puppet. He felt a prickle of annoyance. If I had known, I wouldn't have shown it off so early when it still has so many flaws. Gaara nodded, indicating he would consider the proposal. Meanwhile, a dejected Kankuro called for a crew to help haul the puppet mecha back. It was simply too embarrassing. Having finished his tour of Sunagakure and seen all there was to see, Tobitake Tanbo boarded an airship bound for Kimogakure. I hope Kimogakure's taijutsu doesn't disappoint me. Over the span of about a dozen days, a thoroughly relaxed Tanbo completed his tour of the remaining great shinobi villages, successfully establishing cooperative agreements with all of them. To the other hidden villages, the terms Tanbo offered were incredibly enticing. His personal capabilities, combined with his pitch for a future taijutsu training system, were simply too attractive to ignore, particularly for Kimogakure and Iwagakure. For Kimogakure, taijutsu was their bread and butter. If there was a way to grow even stronger, they were absolutely on board. They also held immense faith in Tanbo's capabilities. After all, they had seen, and some had even experienced, his Genjutsu training system. It was profoundly useful for shinobi. Since they couldn't exactly raid Konoha to steal it, they could only watch enviously as Konoha's Ninja Academy used it to rapidly accelerate their students' combat experience. Now, this upcoming taijutsu training system sounded like an asset every bit as revolutionary. Consequently, they agreed without hesitation. Kimogakure went so far as to offer access to the Falls of Truth on Genbu, Turtle Island, allowing trainees in the system to use it at designated times, a gesture demonstrating incredible sincerity. For Iwadakure, their taijutsu had always been mediocre. Seeing an opportunity to shore up their weakness, they were more than willing to cooperate. After all, the Fourth Shinobi World War had clearly demonstrated the vital importance of close-quarters combat. With Tanbo handling the preparations, all they had to do was wait for the system to launch and then reap the benefits. In exchange, they merely needed to hand over their collective taijutsu insights and experience, along with any secret formulas for medicinal research if possible. It was practically like being spoon-fed. The other villages couldn't fathom why Konoha would do something so seemingly thankless, bearing all the burdens while letting others reap the rewards. It felt like a total windfall, a literal pie falling from the sky. As for their taijutsu secrets, barring a few forbidden techniques, most close combat styles were fundamentally similar, just standard methods used by shinobi to wage war. Chapter 406, Chapter 406, Tobate Saitama. Chapter 406, Tobate Saitama. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. A child named Tobate Saitama was born at the Konoha hospital. Wah! A sharp infant cry rang out, echoing through the halls of the entire Konoha hospital so clearly that everyone could hear it. It was incredibly resounding. His breath is remarkably strong, Shizen remarked as she walked out holding the newborn, speaking directly to Tobate Tanbo. It was indeed remarkably strong. For a newborn baby to cry that loudly was something even Tanbo hadn't expected. Before the birth, he had already sensed the vibrant life force inside Iam. He just hadn't expected such an extraordinary phenomenon to manifest the moment the child entered the world. To make a sound capable of echoing through the entire hospital was nothing short of an anomaly. Hearing the commotion, several nearby medical ninja began walking over to see what was going on, but Shizen quickly shooed them away. Tanbo, this child's life force is even greater than Naruto's was, Shizen said. Having personally examined Naruto's body in the past, she could clearly perceive the staggering vitality coursing through Tobate Saitama, as well as the massive amount of chakra enveloping his chakra pathway system. He was born naturally endowed with immense life force and chakra. It's high, all right. I'm just a bit worried he might be a little simple-minded. Naming him Saitama was a reflection of the deep expectations Tanbo placed on his fourth son after sensing that tremendous physical vitality. However, the thought of him being a bit slow in the head also crossed his mind. After all, his older twin children, Tianyu and Maki, had inherited his sensory talents, while Tobate Kigo had inherited his intellect. This new child had been conceived after Tanbo's own body had evolved to a much more perfect state, meaning it was highly likely the boy had solely inherited his physical and taijutsu capabilities, especially that raw life force. It felt like fate, considering Tanbo had just completed development on his taijutsu training system and was simply waiting for taijutsu ninja to arrive and test it out. If someone with such a powerful life force utilized the training system, their results would undoubtedly far surpass ordinary people. Taijutsu, unlike ninjutsu, relied heavily on the physical form. If a body could self-heal and sustain intense, grueling workouts without relying heavily on medicinal supplements, it would provide an absolute competitive edge. Shizen was somewhat speechless at his comment. Is there any father who deases his own child like that? Though she poked fun at him, Shizen couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. She had been far too busy over the last few years and still hadn't found a partner. It was practically driving her crazy. At 34 years old, she had officially become an older single woman entirely for the sake of Konoha's development, much like the Mizukage over in Kirigakure. Sigh. Who could possibly date someone as relentlessly busy as her? She wanted to have a baby too. She was well aware that her acquaintances from the newer generation, like Sakura, Ino, and Tenten, were all married now, and most were already pregnant. Naruto's child was also due in about 7 or 8 months. The sheer envy was killing her. Maybe I should just settle down with Kakashi and get it over with. Shizen would occasionally find herself thinking this. But Kakashi wasn't exactly the type of guy cut out for romance, he wasn't her ideal partner at all. Besides, Kakashi didn't have that kind of interest in her either. It was truly a difficult situation. I'm not dissing him. By the way, how is Iam doing? Should I use a medical ninjutsu to help her recover faster? Tanbo asked as he took the baby into his arms. Looking down at the completely hairless, smooth head of the infant, he had a slightly ominous premonition. Nevertheless, his priority was checking on his wife inside. Shizen replied, no need. Just hold the baby for now. Let Iam recover naturally. Relying on ninjutsu for every little thing isn't good for the body. Since Iam wasn't a kunoichi, Tanbo gave it some thought and decided it was fine to let her body handle it naturally, even if the recovery process took a bit longer. Good grief, just thinking about how many more babies I'll have to deliver in the future makes my head ache, Shizen complained, feeling utterly exasperated. Especially now, with Sakura and Ino both staying at home due to their pregnancies instead of working, every major and minor issue in the hospital fell squarely onto her shoulders. She was annoyed to death. Why don't you apply for retirement with Kakashi? It really is time for you to find a partner. Otherwise, when you're old, you'll just be watching everyone else raise their kids, Tanbo suggested, trying to offer some advice. No way. Lord Tsunade entrusted this position to me, so I have to do it well. Let's just wait a bit longer. Suit yourself. Either way, I'm only doing what I want to do these days. Living a retired life is absolutely wonderful. Tanbo chuckled. Holding Tobitake Saitama, he channeled his chakra to examine the child's body. He discovered that aside from the overwhelming life force, there was indeed a specific pathway in the boy's head that seemed to constrict his brain, preventing the highly active mental state his siblings possessed. However, this specific pathway was intricately linked to every part of his body, and that massive pool of vitality was surging directly out from it. It was remarkably similar to how the Uchiha's Sharingan stimulated a unique chakra secretion within the body to unlock specialized powers. This physical pathway functioned in the exact same manner. Once the boy began training his body in the future, a unique physical chakra would be generated, entirely unleashing his physical potential. He was a textbook taijutsu prodigy. If ocular jutsu relied on visual prowess, should this physical pathway be called life power or a limiter? Tanbo promptly executed a sealing formula, temporarily sealing off this pathway. Because it completely suppressed other regions of the brain, he was worried it might severely bottleneck the child's IQ. Even under the seal, the pathway continued to exude power, though it was significantly muted compared to a moment ago. I'll undo the seal once he graduates from the Ninja Academy. Otherwise, I'm afraid he really will grow up to be completely single-minded. Tanbo ultimately chose to seal away the child's innate power, planning to release it only after the boy had established a proper worldview and core values at the school. Shizun noticed his movements but didn't intervene. She knew Tanbo would never harm his own flesh and blood, whatever he did was bound to be for the child's own good. Thanks for your help with the delivery. Honestly, any other doctor could have handled it, Tanbo thanked her. Shizun's expression soured even further. If it weren't for the fact that you're a hero of the shinobi world. She had lost yet another window of free time to look for a boyfriend. It was just too hard. Seeing I am being wheeled out of the delivery room, Tanbo walked over. Noticing that she was fast asleep, he refrained from disturbing her. Instead, he cradled the crying Saitama and began strolling casually through the hospital, wanting to let the baby see a bit of the world. Tanbo-sensei, is this your fourth child? Why is he completely bald? Just then, Sai walked over, accompanying Ino. Spotting Tanbo, Ino stepped forward to greet him, her curiosity piqued when she caught sight of Saitama in his arms. Although she currently ran the intelligence division, she was also an exceptionally skilled medical kunoichi who had delivered babies herself. She had truly never seen a newborn with absolutely no baby hair. Sai greeted, Senior Tanbo. Tanbo replied, yeah, I can't figure it out either. I have no idea why he's bald. Ah. My baby won't be born bald too, will they? Please, no. Ino suddenly panicked, imagining herself in that scenario. If she gave birth to a completely bald baby, that image would be too much to bear. Sai reassured her, not necessarily. But they should definitely have blonde hair just like yours. Blonde hair, alright, that's fine. Hearing Sai's words, Ino calmed down, realizing her family's genetics were incredibly dominant. Her child would definitely be a blonde. Chapter 407, Becoming a Father-in-Law Soon. Chapter 407, Becoming a Father-in-Law Soon. Blonde hair. Hearing Sai's words, Tobitake Tanbo instantly pictured a certain group of people in his mind and almost burst out laughing. However, he quickly composed himself, given that his own newborn son was entirely bald. Not that it was a bad thing. He had already checked, Saitama didn't possess any hair follicles. Furthermore, even under the suppression of his sealing jutsu, that single-minded physical pathway in the boy's brain was constantly impacting his physiology. Even if hair follicles were surgically implanted, they would likely be utterly snuffed out by the pressure of that pathway. What on earth went wrong with my genetic evolution to produce this kind of inheritance? Damn it. Because his own body had absorbed far too much genetic data, Tanbo couldn't perfectly control how his traits would recombine within Iam's body. The miracles of life were simply too unpredictable, much like Naruto and Hinata giving birth to a Boruto who naturally awakened the Jogan. Tanbo, we'll head out first. I need to take a routine checkup on the baby, Ino said, waving to him before pulling Sai along with her. Honestly, getting a husband makes you forget your teacher. Talk about putting romance over friendship, Sai. Watching the couple's intimate departure, a faint smile tugged at the corner of Tanbo's lips. Back in the day, he had given a tiny, young Ino a rather amusing gift using his Eye of the Creator technique. Now, even she was about to become a mother. Time flew by so fast, yet at the same time, it felt incredibly slow. Let's go, Saitama. I hope you grow up to be just as terrifyingly powerful as your namesake. Tanbo held immense expectations for the boy. Since the child was born today, he wanted to carry Saitama all around Konoha to let him see the world. As for whether the infant was too fragile to be taken outside, There was absolutely nothing to worry about. With this kid's innate life force combined with his dense physical structure, he was perfectly fine. Strolling along the main streets of Konoha, watching the heavy flow of pedestrians and the modern technological vehicles driving past, Tanbo couldn't help but feel sentimental. Ultimately, his presence had served its purpose, drastically accelerating the development of the shinobi world. In fact, it was highly debatable whether the technology of his previous world could even match up against the current tech of the shinobi world. Even nuclear weapons might not cut it. Given a shinobi's sensory perception and the sheer advancement of ultra-powerful chakra technology, Earth's mundane tech simply couldn't keep pace. Take Kumogakure's chakra cannon, for instance, a weapon capable of obliterating countless meteors out in space was far beyond anything a nuclear warhead could ever hope to achieve. When technology developed within a supernatural world, ordinary, mundane science truly found it difficult to see its tail lights. Wah! Cradled in his arms, Saitama stared out at the bustling, vibrant world, seemingly sensing the energy around him as he let out soft cooing noises. Every now and then, the laughter and cheerful chatter of the villagers drifted through the air. The era of peace had officially arrived, and it truly felt 1,000 times better than the era of war. Tanbo looked down at Saitama once more. This should definitely be my last child. If I keep having more, who knows what kind of anomaly will pop out next. He could feel that due to his own advanced evolution, any children he fathered from here on out would likely possess some eccentricities. They might be geniuses, but their differences from ordinary people would be stark. Not that he needed his children to achieve anything spectacular, he could comfortably afford to raise them no matter what. Besides, Ayam was getting older. For children were more than enough of a handful, and it was time for them to enjoy their later years in peace. Woo-woo. Since you have asked your question so sincerely, I shall compassionately grant you the answer. I am Captain Tanbo. Then I'm Uzumaki Naruto. What? Why do I have to be the rogue ninja Sasuke? No way, I want to be the Hokage. Along the street, a group of young children were playing a ninja game, bickering endlessly over who got to play which character. They perfectly embodied the vibrant, carefree energy of youth during peacetime. Time continued to flow. Another half a year passed in a flash. At just 6 months old, Saitama was already fully capable of crawling, walking, and even hopping and bouncing around, keeping Ayam constantly on her toes. The boy was an absolute powerhouse of mischief with boundless physical stamina, leaving her thoroughly exhausted. Even Tobitake Tozai was worn ragged by the toddler. He was infinitely more chaotic than his older siblings had been at his age. His 3 older brothers and sisters had been incredibly intelligent and remarkably quiet. Saitama is so full of energy. Maki, let's have a baby just like him in the future, okay? Wataru sat beside Maki on the living room sofa, watching a relentlessly hyperactive Saitama being chased around by a panting Ayam. Maki's face flushed a deep crimson. Honestly, when do you even want to have one? We're turning of age in just a few months, you know. They were both about to turn 16. Hearing Wataru bring up having a baby made her heart flutter frantically. Oh my goodness, how can he say something so incredibly romantic out of nowhere? Wataru smiled gently. Whenever you want is fine with me. As long as it's what you want. Shy, but speaking of which, Dad ran off again and left Mom to take care of him all by herself. Seriously, what a slacker. Maki pouted, shifting the subject. Wataru countered, I heard the taijutsu training system is nearing completion, so Senior Tanbo had to go supervise the final stages. I'm really looking forward to it. Tanbo was his absolute idol, and very soon, he would officially become his father-in-law. Wataru held immense anticipation for the revolutionary system his future father-in-law was creating. By this point, he, Tianyu, and Maki had all officially attained the rank of Konoha Jonin through their exceptional abilities, granting them formal participation in the village's high-level decision-making processes. Consequently, they were well informed about these developments. What's there to look forward to? It's just a system for physical conditioning, Maki huffed. If you ask me, that thing is kind of pointless. He should have saved the funds to build a massive amusement park for Konoha instead. Maki preferred things that brought pure entertainment. After all, they were currently living in an era of absolute peace. What was the point of endlessly grinding to become stronger? Wataru felt a bit helpless. Lately, Maki had been growing less and less interested in the standard affairs of a shinobi. While her raw abilities continued to skyrocket, she had completely lost the burning drive she used to possess back when they ran missions across the lands. It was as though the comforts of a peaceful life had subtly eroded her original shinobi willpower. However, Wataru understood her perfectly. If it weren't for his own absolute obsession with swordsmanship and his boundless admiration for Tobitake Tanbo, he would likely be feeling the exact same way. Oh right, that blockhead Tianyu is actually being actively pursued by Hinoko. I seriously can't wrap my head around it. Maki suddenly pivoted the topic back to her twin brother. She truly couldn't comprehend how a guy like Tianyu ended up being the one getting chased. When he was trying to pursue Hanabi before, he acted like an utter simp. How could a guy like that have a girl falling over him? Wataru replied, well, no matter how you look at it, he is still the strongest among us. It's only natural for Hinoko to admire him. Oh yeah. Saitama scrambled past them on all fours, crawling back and forth across the floor at lightning speed. Maki reached down and casually scooped him up by the back of his shirt. Little brother, stop interrupting our conversation. Scooped up in the air, Saitama blinked his large, round eyes. Instead of crying, he simply stared up at his older sister with a pair of bright, watery eyes, flailing his arms and legs as if he found the whole experience incredibly amusing. Give him to me, the little troublemaker. Ayam walked over, catching her breath as she took Saitama into her arms. Thank goodness their estate was spacious enough to accommodate his antics. By the way, your father mentioned that all the preparations for your wedding are already complete, Ayam added with a warm smile, looking at the young couple. The moment you both hit the legal age, we can hold the ceremony immediately. He promised it'll be a massive surprise for you both. Oh yeah. What? Dad is so swamped with that taijutsu training system, yet he actually found the time to plan a wedding for us. That's a miracle, Maki exclaimed in surprise. In the past, she had always imagined that her father would throw her a magnificent, grand wedding when the day came. She just hadn't expected him to have everything completely prepared before she even turned of age. Now, her curiosity was piqued. Her father hadn't made a single peep about it standardly, so what on earth had he planned? She figured it would probably be a breathtakingly romantic ceremony, similar to the one big brother Naruto had. Chapter 408, Completing the Preliminary Stage. Chapter 408, Completing the Preliminary Stage. In Konoha, right beside the Scientific Technology Development Bureau, a towering and magnificent space-time barrier rose from the ground. It stood like a colossal shield reaching into the sky, enveloping everything in its vicinity. Looking closely, one could see countless glowing runes floating and intertwining in the air. As if possessed by life, they pulsed and connected in a specific rhythm, constructing a brand new architectural structure in a highly sophisticated manner. Every brick, stone, and pillar was forged entirely from these runes. The entire complex showcased a highly unique style, seamlessly blending the minimalist efficiency of modern tech with a profound sense of mystery. Its sleek, natural lines and the exquisite patterns etched into the surfaces emanated a captivating radiance. From afar, it looked like a rare masterpiece originating from an alien world. A vast crowd of shinobi had gathered near the site, making the atmosphere exceptionally lively. Among them were the 5 Kage and several other legendary figures of the shinobi world. This is the core of the taijutsu training system, everyone, Tobitake Tanbo introduced to the crowd. The 4th Reikage, A, stared at the sci-fi-esque building. Looks impressive. The level of technology here is incredibly advanced. It felt even more developed than the tech in Kimogakure. So this is built using some kind of space-time ninjutsu? Killer Bee asked curiously, looking around. There didn't seem to be an actual training ground anywhere nearby. Might Guy and Rock Lee were particularly ecstatic. Out of everyone present, the establishment of this system excited them the most. Yes. By stepping through this space-time gate, you will enter the training environment, Tanbo explained. The next step is to have the Kage and our taijutsu experts test the system. It wasn't entirely finished yet. It still required testing by various ninja, both the exceptionally strong and the weak. Tanbo just needed this final step to wrap everything up. Let's go then. Show me what you've achieved. I've been looking forward to this, Anoki voiced. He had been waiting a long time, especially since his village had invested resources into this project. He wanted to see if Tanbo's new training system could match the brilliance of the Genjutsu training system. Nearby, Orochimaru licked his lips. I would also like to see what exactly you have developed using all the research results I provided. Then let's head inside and take a look. Tanbo placed his hand on a control screen on the structure, channeling his chakra to activate the system. Beneath the facility, a massive chakra generator surged to life, bursting with a colossal wave of chakra to sustain the barrier ninjutsu above. Anyone with sensory abilities would notice that a substantial mass of white Zetsu cells was integrated into the generator. A massive doorway formed by a shimmering curtain of light manifested in the center of the structure, revealing a swirling vortex. On the other side of the void lay a vast expanse of lush green grass swaying under a gentle breeze, with nothing else in sight. Is that the training ground? A pocket dimension. The Reikage deduced that the other side wasn't a location within the shinobi world. Without hesitation, he stepped through. Boom. The moment his feet planted on the other side, the Reikage's knees buckled. His face sagged slightly under an invisible weight, and a sharp rip echoed as the hem of his clothes tore under the sudden pressure. Ha! With a deep grunt, he forced his posture straight, stabilizing his body. Seeing the mighty Reikage react this way, the onlookers outside were stunned. They turned their gazes to Tanbo, their eyes demanding an explanation. However, they quickly watched as the Reikage rapidly adapted to the environment. Come on through. The gravity here is just a bit intense, the Reikage called back to them. Gravity. Curious, Killer Bee stepped inside. Immediately, his body buckled under the weight just as the Reikage had. B, this is Kagaya's dimension, the voice of the Eight Tails, Gyuki, suddenly echoed in B's mind. Kagaya's dimension? B asked internally. Yeah, I remember this place. This is Kagaya's gravity dimension. It looks like Tobitake Tanbo did something to link a space-time barrier directly to this realm. Gyuki possessed vivid memories of this harsh environment. The rest of the group filed in one after another. Tanbo followed them inside. Everyone stumbled for a brief second before quickly adjusting. They were all high-level shinobi, and because the gravity wasn't set to its absolute maximum, they could easily resist it by managing their chakra outputs. This is the gravity dimension, a training environment perfectly tailored for taijutsu, Tanbo introduced. It trains a ninja's physical endurance and raw strength fundamentally from every angle. Simply surviving here for a period of time will drastically fortify the human body. What a magnificent place. Tanbo, why didn't you introduce this sooner? If you had, my youth would have burned even more fiercely. Might Guy yelled, deeply moved. Rock Lee was equally fired up. Fantastic. With a place like this, my taijutsu will definitely break through to a whole new level. The master and disciple immediately embraced each other, weeping tears of intense passion. They weren't the only ones. Feeling the crushing weight on their shoulders, everyone present recognized the immense value of this realm for taijutsu users. In truth, it would benefit any ninja. It was gravity, after all, the ultimate tool for comprehensive physical conditioning. Training here will definitely elevate my swordsmanship, Chojuro managed to say, though he was currently sprawled flat on the ground. The sheer weight of his twin swords, Hiramakarei, had dragged him down. Kakashi looked around. Is this all there is to it? He then spotted a cluster of buildings standing further out in the distance. Tanbo replied, the gravity dimension is merely one phase of the training ground, suited primarily for newcomers. For physical conditioning, there was truly no better environment than this. What purpose do those buildings serve? That is the medical and recovery zone. It utilizes Konoha's most cutting-edge medical technology. After a grueling training session, ninja can use the facilities to recover their stamina, heal internal hidden injuries, and run comprehensive diagnostic scans on their physical data. Tanbo detailed the functions of the architecture. Its primary purpose was to eliminate the wear and tear or chronic physical damage accumulated during intense training, while offering real-time physiological feedback. Most of the machinery had been engineered by the Scientific Technology Development Bureau. Only the core, highly complex components required direct development from Orochimaru and Tanbo himself. The technical threshold was exceptionally high. The personnel hired by the Bureau had finally proven their worth, saving the top-tier experts from having to waste time on minor technical logistics. Crucially, a portion of the software had been coded by his second son, Tobitake Kigo. Having that level of scientific research intellect at just 6 years old was something Tanbo took immense pride in. Brilliant, Inoki remarked. But what about the rest? Where exactly are you applying all the taijutsu data and insights we provided? An extreme training environment was something Iwagakure could technically replicate themselves, given enough budget. The real core lay elsewhere. Follow me, I'll show you. In the future, anyone who wishes to train in this taijutsu training system will have to meet my specific criteria before they are granted access to this realm. With that, Tanbo led the group deeper into the facility cluster. Chapter 409, Chapter 409, 8 Great Tremor. Chapter 409, 8 Great Tremor. Ha. He. Ha. He. Within the vast, expansive dimension, countless shinobi were rigorously training their taijutsu. Among them, only an old man and Tobitake Tanbo remained standing idly without participating. Inoki was sidelined due to his chronic back pain. Even while merely standing in this space, he had to constantly maintain his lightweight rock technique to support himself, otherwise, his frail lower back would have collapsed entirely under the localized pressure. Tanbo, on the other hand, had completely adapted to the gravity, standing perfectly at ease without any issues. Meanwhile, the other Kage, their bodyguards, and various elite ninja had promptly joined the training after reviewing the technical data on the 8 Great Tremor. Not a single one wanted to be left out. Tell me, does that taijutsu style truly possess such devastating power? Inoki asked, his voice laced with lingering disbelief. You claim that if someone fully masters it, they can use pure taijutsu to force a woman of Kagaya's caliber to suffer a crushing defeat. In the data compiled by Tanbo, Inoki had seen the true purpose behind the taijutsu scrolls Tanbo had been collecting from across the world. Tanbo had meticulously synthesized them into a comprehensive series of training methodologies. Combined with his newly developed environmental system, it was collectively known as the Eight Great Tremors, a system that pushed physical boundaries from cellular conditioning and chakra utilization to advanced body recovery techniques. The sheer brutality of the training methods outlined in the scrolls had left even a seasoned, widely experienced Tsuchikage like Inoki completely dumbfounded. To think such an absurdly intense regimen could exist, it required a user to train year after year inside environments akin to natural disasters. Of course. Didn't you review the analytical data yourself? Tanbo replied smoothly, looking down at the crowd performing their exercises. The very first stage of the training required the user to fully adapt to this dimension's crushing gravity and achieve a physical output 10 times greater than their maximum capacity in the outside world. Only then would the baseline stage be considered complete. The likelihood of anyone actually completing it seems minuscule, Inoki countered, shaking his head. Just overcoming the gravitational threshold alone is enough to claim an old man's life. Tanbo chuckled. Naturally. What accomplishment in this world is easily achieved? Even ninjutsu requires a user to first master nature transformation, use that as a foundation to develop a specific jutsu formula, and then practice relentlessly until it is perfected. A shinobi's training was never meant to be easy. Every breakthrough demanded years of grueling, accumulated effort. If it were easy, elite jonin wouldn't be such a rare commodity across the nations. True enough. If someone manages to master even a single tier of this system, they would likely stand completely peerless in terms of taijutsu within the shinobi world, Inoki mused, deeply admiring Tanbo's grand vision. He felt incredibly fortunate that he hadn't let his usual stubborn streak get the better of him when Tanbo initially requested Iwatakure's taijutsu archives. Had he refused, the Hidden Stone would have missed out on a revolutionary opportunity, leaving them lagging miles behind the other villages. Thinking up to this point, Inoki glanced sideways at Tanbo, wondering what the man was truly plotting. Given Konoha's absolute dominance, Tanbo could have easily kept this training system exclusive to his own village. Even if the results were slightly less optimal without foreign data, it would still be an overwhelmingly powerful asset. Why share it so freely with the rest of the world? Was it truly for the sake of peace? That felt highly unlikely. Although the Shinobi Alliance had maintained a steady era of peace since its inception, effectively halting major conflicts, Tanbo himself had once quoted a famous idiom, "Born in peace and prosperity, one dies in adversity and peril." None of the hidden villages would ever fully expose their deepest secrets, they inherently hoarded their finest techniques. It's a necessary step, Tanbo explained calmly. In the future, I intend to integrate this system into the Chunin exams. Candidates may have to survive this exact trial before they are permitted to promote. Tanbo had already charted out the long-term utility of this facility. Once the elites down below finished testing the prototype, he would implement their data to perfect the system. Afterward, he would introduce the gravity dimension trial as a mandatory hurdle for the Chunin exams, effectively elevating the baseline power floor of the entire global shinobi population. Of course, they would only need to pass the basic gravity trial, there was no need to enforce excessive standards on a standard Chunin rank. Down on the training grounds, a few individuals were proving to be absolute scene stealers. Orochimaru's body was shifting fluidly, stretching and compressing under the heavy gravitational strain in a manner that scarcely looked human. How fascinating, the Sannin thought, a thin smile playing on his lips. Tanbo's conceptualization was brilliantly eccentric. If taijutsu ninja trained systematically under this methodology, their collective physical might would reach an unprecedented zenith. Should someone like Uchiha Madara be resurrected once more, he would likely be beaten to a pulp by this upcoming generation of brawlers. However, Orochimaru wondered if this would be enough to halt the Otsutsuki should they descend in greater numbers. It would likely still be an uphill battle. The sheer weight of Genjutsu, divine arts, was terrifyingly absolute, particularly their space-time variations. If an enemy simply chose to conceal themselves across dimensions, even taijutsu capable of bending space would find no target. From a pragmatic standpoint, Orochimaru felt it might be more beneficial to spend time researching countermeasures against future sight and other conceptual abilities that would offer a slightly better margin of victory. Leaf Rising Rock. Leaf Great Whirlwind. Two bright green streaks blurred across the gravity field, clashing violently in midair. It appeared as though the crushing atmospheric weight failed to hinder their movements in the slightest. Boom. Their forearms collided with roaring force, their eyes blazing with a shared, overwhelming passion. Lee. Can you feel it? Our youth is roaring. Might Guy bellowed. Guy-sensei, I feel it. Our youth isn't just roaring, it is cheering for us. Rock Lee cried out in response. Lee. You've truly grown. Your comprehension of youth has reached a whole new plateau. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Sniffle. Tears streaming down their faces, the duo continued to clash with renewed vigor. Having reviewed the training methods for the 8 great tremors just now, what insights have you gathered, Lee? Guy asked amidst their exchange. Lee grimaced slightly. It's exceptionally difficult, sensei. It feels even harder than the academic curriculum back at the Ninja Academy. I've grasped a few concepts, but not many. Even if it eludes us right now, we must absolute master it in the future. That is the ultimate esoteric secret of taijutsu. Right. Even without ninjutsu or genjutsu, we will still prove ourselves as outstanding shinobi. Though the technical jargon in the documents gave both of them a slight headache, the scrolls were undeniably packed with invaluable physical insights. They couldn't afford to ignore them, lest they face an early retirement. Those two green fellows aren't half bad, the Reikage remarked from a short distance away. He was currently practicing Kimogakure's signature close-quarters combat routines alongside Killer Bee, his muscles flaring to life under the oppressive gravity. The sensation brought back fond memories of the brutal training pressures from his younger years. Bang. Bang. Brother. B. The legendary duo collided in a burst of raw physical power. They had absolutely no intention of being outshone by the eccentric Leaf duo. Furthermore, their theoretical foundation was far more mature than Guy and Lee's. They could easily decipher the complex equations in Tanbo's data, and both secretly desired to become the very first men to conquer the entire training regimen. Meanwhile, practicing independently off to the side, Darui couldn't shake a lingering sense of foreboding. He genuinely appreciated this training system. It was a routine forged for real men. However, the Reikage had dropped subtle hints about handing the mantle of being Kage over to him by next year. Maybe I should concoct an excuse to reject the promotion. Darui thought listlessly. No. Kumogakure still needs me, and the Reikage is undeniably getting older. At worst, I'll just recruit a few more secretaries to handle the administrative paperwork for the village, allowing me to clear up plenty of free time to train here. After all, strength remains the ultimate law in our world. The entire pocket dimension quickly devolved into a bustling, high-octane arena. Whenever a ninja trained to the point of physical exhaustion or muscular micro-tearing, they would promptly retreat into the designated medical facility. There, utilizing the specialized medicinal baths and advanced technology Tanbo had prepared, their bodies underwent rapid, deep tissue regeneration. Concurrently, the system systematically logged their localized physical training metrics. High above the training fields, a highly advanced piece of chakra technology floated silently, recording every single training sequence and physical movement performed by the participants. These were all intricate layers of Tanbo's master design. After all, a facility was merely a shell. He required vast, diverse pools of data from top-tier combatants to finalize the ultimate iteration of the 8 Great Tremors. In Tanbo's estimation, if a human being could actually survive and conquer every single tier of this extreme regimen, they would possess the physical prowess to level someone like Kagaya with a single punch, provided she didn't choose to run away first. Chapter 410, Chapter 410, Establishment. Chapter 410, Establishment. Come along. That was the gravity dimension meant for newcomers. Now, let's look at a different zone. Tobitake Tanbo continued to lead the group to inspect the other pocket dimensions, letting them try out the training conditions in those environments as well. The flaming mountains, the void, the swamp zone. One unimaginable environment after another unfolded before their eyes. These desolate, harsh landscapes were far more brutal than the deserts of Sunagakure. It was a mystery how Tanbo had even conceived the idea of training in such places. Furthermore, according to his specific taijutsu blueprint, a practitioner was required to survive in each individual layer of these dimensions for an entire year, without eating or drinking. Only then could one fully master the ultimate esoteric art, the 8 Great Tremors. The medical and diagnostic facilities back in the gravity dimension were merely technological aids designed to support beginners. In the later phases, a shinobi had to rely entirely on their own sheer willpower to endure and conquer the training. Rock Lee stared at the seemingly impossible landscapes. Surviving in each of these environments for a whole year without any food provided. Guy-sensei, is that even something a human being can achieve? Hearing this, a cold sweat broke out across Might Guy's face. I am afraid this might just be a wild fantasy of Tanbo's, Lee. If no food is provided, wouldn't we simply starve to death? Therefore, it must be a fantasy. No, it is definitely not a fantasy. I have already engineered a specific technique that even someone with zero ninjutsu talent, like Lee, can easily master. It's called gluttony. It allows a practitioner to absorb nutrients directly from the ambient air, or even eat soil and grass to extract essential elemental compounds to sustain the body's nutritional requirements. So, rest assured. You two are the optimal test subjects for this technique. You will blaze a new trail for all taijutsu ninja across the world. I recall you two saying things like that quite often, right? Tanbo explained with a subtle smirk, hearing their exchange. His tone clearly implied that he had already accounted for every single variable. Even if there were things he hadn't anticipated, it didn't matter because he was fully prepared. The monitoring systems weren't just for show. The moment an emergency arose, he could pull them out immediately. Lee felt his legs go weak. This is far too absurd, Guy-sensei. The willpower of my youth is actually starting to wane. Guy added, "It's all right, Lee, because the youth in me is fading too. I think it might be time for me to retire. This is absolutely magnificent. It feels like it was practically tailor-made for me. Senior Tonbo, as expected of you. Please look after me from now on, the first man to conquer the 8 great tremors will definitely be me." Shira exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with intense fervor after testing all the zones and hearing Tonbo's explanation. This caliber of physical conditioning was simply spectacular. He could already feel that the 7 heavens breathing method he had independently developed was reaching its bottleneck. This system offered him a path to grow exponentially stronger, and it required nothing but pure taijutsu. Darn it, Lee. We absolutely cannot lose to a guy from an outside village. We must pull ourselves together. Hearing Shira's declaration, Guy's slumped, dejected face instantly snapped back to life with burning enthusiasm. Lee felt exactly the same. Staring at Shira's burning resolve, he stated firmly, "You're right, Guy-sensei. We can definitely pull this off. So what if it means going without food and water while enduring 8 different dimensions? We can do it." Yet, despite their fiery words, tears were already streaming down their faces. No food, no water, and for an entire year. Wow. Incredible. We'll leave this sort of grueling task to you young folks. An old man like me will just pop in occasionally for a casual workout. I'm getting too old for this, too old, the Rakage remarked, clearing his throat awkwardly. Anoki chimed in, "Indeed. I'm just a bundle of old bones now. The rest is up to you youngsters." Meanwhile, the younger generation like Darui and Chojuro were breaking out in cold sweats. Were they expected to set an example for their subordinates? That sounded entirely too brutal. Wait, they were slated to become the next Kage in the future, they would be completely buried under administrative duties. They could easily delegate this training to the rest of the global population down the line. Orochimaru licked his lips playfully. My child is about to be born soon. I wonder if I should have him come experience this system when the time comes. With the core mechanics established, the taijutsu training system was officially complete. Following a comprehensive deliberation among the 5 Kage, a standardized training protocol was established. They would initially dispatch a small test group to run a trial phase. Once the prototype was verified to be completely stable, they would formally allocate personnel for full-scale training. To avoid wasting valuable resources, each hidden village would only be permitted to send their most strong-willed, dedicated shinobi to train within the system each year. In return, the foreign villages would supply the raw medicinal materials, which Konoha would process and provide back to the trainees free of charge. This arrangement served as their capital investment. Enormous amounts of funding would be poured into the system annually, and not a single Kage raised an objection. When the elite jonin of the various villages learned of the specific parameters, they offered no resistance either. This was undeniably a massive net positive for their respective nations. Naturally, Konoha walked away with the premium benefit. Because the physical entrance to this massive training system was anchored directly within Konoha, it would serve as an incredibly potent economic driver for the Hidden Leaf. According to verified reports from the Konoha News Network. Headed by Captain Tonbo, with comprehensive logistics technology provided by Orochimaru, director of the Scientific Technology Development Bureau, alongside vital medical backing from the Bureau's staff and the Konoha Hospital, the Shinobi Alliance Taijutsu training system has officially been established. This marks yet another revolutionary institution introduced by the Shinobi Alliance, following the inception of the Shinobi Association. The Hidden Mist, Hidden Sand, Hidden Cloud, and Hidden Stone villages have likewise committed substantial resources, making profound contributions to the creation of this training system. According to our broadcast correspondents, following the implementation of the taijutsu training system, physical combat specialists are poised to become a core mainstream force, allowing shinobi with subpar chakra control to ascend as true powerhouses, much like Konoha's own blue beast, Might Guy. This broadcast is jointly presented by the 5 great nations and the 5 great shinobi villages. We will now enter a brief commercial break. Please tune back in 10 minutes for an in-depth analytical report. Across the televisions of the various nations, the breaking news issued by the Shinobi Alliance instantly triggered a firestorm of public debate throughout the entire shinobi world. What is going on? Haven't we already entered an era of absolute peace? Why are they suddenly training such terrifyingly powerful ninja? Could it be that the leaders of the Shinobi Alliance and the high-ranking officials of the 5 great nations are plotting to completely unify the world by force? I think that's highly likely. Whether we have peace or war is entirely up to the 5 great nations and their hidden villages anyway. What do ordinary people like us even matter? But why would they broadcast it so publicly? Does this mean we might actually have an opportunity to participate as well? Speculation ran rampant. A pervasive anxiety gripped the populace, with many wondering if another catastrophic event was on the horizon, threatening to plunge the world back into open warfare. The Fourth Shinobi World War had inflicted staggering, devastating losses across all nations, claiming the lives of countless shinobi. To establish such a brutal training system now felt, to many, like a blatant disrespect to the hard-won peace. A multitude of citizens even took to the streets in protest, organizing demonstrations to actively boycott the newly announced system. Among the chaos, certain individuals with hidden agendas sought to exploit the situation to destabilize the shinobi world. These instigators were primarily rogue ninja who had deserted their posts during the Fourth World War out of sheer cowardice. Their propaganda was highly effective. As rogue ninja, the more chaotic the world became, the less time the Shinobi Alliance would have to hunt them down. Despite the Shinobi Alliance quickly issuing formal statements to dispel the rumors, the deliberate instigation by these malicious actors gradually birthed pockets of civil unrest. Because the announcement had come directly from official news outlets, its sheer scale inevitably caused various factions to waver. However, among the shifting global powers, those organizations, corporations, and clans that inherently favored stability, specifically those that either employed elite ninja or possessed internal leadership, swiftly managed to stabilize their own territories. Possessing a firm grasp of the grand global landscape, they recognized that this training system would ultimately have zero negative impact on their core operations. Chapter 411, Little Boruto. Chapter 411, Little Boruto. The relentless public speculation across the shinobi world naturally did nothing to sway the decisions of the high-ranking officials within the Shinobi Alliance. They wielded the absolute strongest power on Earth. Peace had been achieved entirely because of their existence. To maintain that peace, one required absolute, uncontested power. This was a fundamental truth that every village and nation understood flawlessly. Only by guaranteeing their own military might could they ensure that global stability endured. As for the instigators stirring up the civilian populace, the Shinobi Alliance immediately dispatched specialized hunter nin units to track them down globally, simultaneously issuing high-level bounties through the World Shinobi Association. Every rogue and bounty hunter in existence joined the hunt. In fact, many rogue ninja began slaughtering each other for the rewards. Though they shared the same status as deserters, they were by no means comrades. The Shinobi Alliance manipulated this psychological vulnerability flawlessly. Gradually, the destabilizing elements across the world were suppressed once more. Before long, no one dared to raise their voice in protest anymore. They had no choice but to abide by the system established by the Shinobi Alliance and live out their lives quietly. Bang. 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 As time steadily ticked by, the taijutsu training system finally achieved full, multi-dimensional operational capability. The 5 great shinobi villages each selected a batch of elite trainees to enter the system. While training under the harsh environments, the candidates would also utilize space-time barriers to travel to the Falls of Truth on Genbu, Turtle Island, to forge their willpower. To conquer one's inner darkness was the absolute prerequisite to scaling the absolute zenith of the taijutsu path. Even Naruto and his peers stepped in to experience the trials firsthand. Meanwhile, within the land of demons, a cloaked figure was traversing the vast, desolate desert. Behind him lay one of the country's prominent fortresses. Uncle Tanbo, as expected of you. To think you could devise such a terrifyingly efficient training method. Even while traveling abroad, Sasuke constantly kept tabs on the happenings back in Konoha. Originally, during the Tonari Otsutsuki crisis, he had prepared to return to the village to assist. However, once Tobitake Tanbo and the others single-handedly neutralized the entire meteor threat, he casually resumed his journey of redemption without any lingering worries, only occasionally returning to Konoha to ensure the expansion of the Uchiha lineage. He had actually slipped back to test the taijutsu training system himself and found it to be a flawlessly optimized method for physical conditioning. It was highly effective even for someone of his tier. The specific applications within the system involved concepts that even he didn't naturally possess. If someone could truly conquer the entire training regimen, they would likely ascend to a level of power surpassing both himself and Naruto. But the Otsutsuki, there should be a ruin located around here. Sasuke shifted his gaze toward a specific coordinate within the land of demons. During his investigations, he had gathered rumors of a legend stating that ages ago, terrifying monsters had descended from the sky into this territory. They possessed deathly pale skin and horrific, awe-inspiring eyes. By cross-referencing local folklore with ancient historical records passed down through generations, Sasuke had finally pinpointed the direction of an Otsutsuki ruin. This time, the ruin was his primary objective. Legend dictated that a catastrophic battle had once unfolded there. Though the citizens of the land of demons had forgotten most of the details over the centuries, Sasuke successfully excavated the relevant data using his elite shinobi track and field intelligence skills. If I can find the time, I should head back to train in that system too, Sasuke thought. I can't afford to let the younger generation overtake me. Wah. Inside the Konoha hospital, newborns were entering the world one after another, their cries interweaving into a unique symphony of life. This phenomenon had been persisting for quite some time, signaling the grand awakening of Konoha's newest generation. Hinata cradled her newborn son, a gentle, radiant smile gracing her lips. Boruto. I feel so incredibly happy. Naruto sat right by her side, keeping her company. Staring down at Boruto nestled in her arms, a wide grin broke across his face. He was officially a father now. Ah, Boruto is so adorable. He definitely inherits my style from when I was a kid. Looking at Boruto's features, Naruto was reminded of the photographs and video recordings Tanbo-sensei had shown him. Those files actually contained footage of Naruto during his early childhood, and the resemblance to Boruto was striking. As for the name Boruto, it had been chosen by Uncle Tanbo. Finding a fitting name for a child was simply too difficult for Naruto. Furthermore, the name aligned perfectly with Naruto's wishes. He was well aware of his own intellectual shortcomings and deeply hoped his child would grow up to be highly knowledgeable, erudite, rather than someone who felt completely drained the moment they tried to study standard academic concepts. Hinata giggled softly. Boruto is way handsomer than you were. No way, I was plenty handsome too. Naruto whined playfully. Our other friends are due soon too. When the time comes, their kids can be classmates with Boruto, Naruto added as a sudden realization struck him. Ino, Sakura, and the rest of their circle were all nearing their due dates, trailing just a few months behind them. They might very well end up in the same academy class. Lately, he had seen Asuma-sensei's daughter, who was absolutely precious, as well as Tanbo-sensei's youngest son. Tanbo-sensei's boy was completely bald, giving him an incredibly adorable, mascot-like vibe. Naruto was just glad Boruto wasn't bald. Hinata noted, Boruto's eyes look just like yours, but they seem so much brighter. She gazed into Boruto's eyes, noting that while the iris color was virtually identical to Naruto's, they possessed a brilliant clarity, almost as if a highly unique aura were sealed within them. Deep within Boruto's physical form, a microscopic neural thread subtle traced its way through his entire physiology, mapping out his complete biological blueprints and transmitting the data to an external location. As expected of the future child of destiny. This physical talent is undeniably superior to ordinary children, Tobitake Tanbo thought, standing atop a massive tree branch just outside the Konoha hospital as the data streamed into his consciousness. Today was the day Boruto entered the world, so he had naturally come to observe the next generation's savior while subtly harvesting his biological metrics. The current Boruto was fundamentally different from his future self, he did not yet bear the Otsutsuki karma. This was the absolute pristine window to collect his pure biological data, specifically, the genetic sequence behind the Jogan. Tanbo had been monitoring this meticulously. From the very day Hinata conceived, he had manipulated a trace neural signature left within her body to gather comprehensive data on the entire process of embryonic development, leading up to Boruto's birth today. As his personal power continued to scale to unprecedented heights, Tanbo's covert techniques had evolved to such an extreme depth that they were completely undetectable even to the Byakugan. Currently, the only two individuals capable of perceiving his subtle operations were Orochimaru and Kabuto, simply because they possessed independent research archives and could slowly deduce it through laboratory experimentation. He had successfully secured Boruto's genetic blueprint. The genesis of life truly was a miracle, much like that bizarre physical pathway inside Saitama's brain. It wasn't something that could be easily categorized or explained by basic science, not even Orochimaru could fully map out the variables, as the fusion of two lineages to birth an anomaly was a highly chaotic, intricate process. The Jogan, is it truly the ultimate weapon destined to counter the Otsutsuki? Or perhaps, I can alter the course of the future entirely myself. Tanbo recalled the ancient prophecy delivered by the great Toad Sage. According to those visions, it was ultimately Boruto who would resolve the looming crises of the shinobi world, striking down every adversary. Furthermore, a clone of Jiraiya would eventually become his secondary mentor. Rather than placing the fate of the universe squarely on Boruto's shoulders, Tanbo vastly preferred to engineer a resolution through his own methodologies. Nevertheless, the trajectory of Boruto's growth was a vector he couldn't afford to neglect. Reflecting on the future timeline where a time-traveling Boruto could comfortably suppress a younger Naruto despite being the same age, it was clear the boy would grow to be an absolute powerhouse. Whether Tanbo could ultimately outmaneuver fate itself depended entirely on the pieces he laid down now. Chapter 412, Unlimited Void, Modified. Chapter 412, Unlimited Void, Modified. Unlimited Void. Within the core laboratory of Scientific Technology Development Zone 13, Tobitake Tanbo formed a hand seal. A monster surge of chakra erupted from his body. Countless runic formulas instantly manifested, swirling rapidly around him. Torrents of massive data streams pulsed outward from the epicenter, the sheer volume of information severely disrupting the localized space and completely warping the surrounding magnetic field. Eventually, the magnetic field twisted to such an extreme degree that the space housing Tanbo seemingly faded entirely from the world's perception, as if he no longer existed in reality. Outside the containment chamber, two individuals wearing specialized goggles monitored the data flooding onto the screens. Warning. Warning. Colossal stream of information detected. System processor has stalled. Initiating automated data stream filtering. Filtering complete. System processor has resumed normal function. A mechanical voice chimed from the intercom speakers. The processing unit, which had been overheating into the red zone alongside the diagnostic monitors, gradually stabilized as the indicators shifted back to a safe green light. What an extraordinary ninjutsu, or rather, what an extraordinary genjutsu, Orochimaru remarked, his lips curling into a look of profound intrigue as he stared at the figure practicing inside the chamber. The sheer volume of data generated was something even the diagnostic tools of Zone 13 struggled to fully calculate. Incredible. If anyone were to be directly struck by this technique, I suspect their brain would be instantly incinerated from information overload, Kabuto added. Even through his specialized goggles, he could distinctly perceive the crushing weight of the data stream. It felt as though the complex biological data of countless Otsutsuki had exploded into existence all at once. Crack. Suddenly, a faint snapping sound echoed as a fracture spiderwebbed across the frame of Kabuto's specialized goggles. It was genuinely hard to fathom how a human being could master such a power. To duplicate an astronomical amount of memory, trigger it into a localized explosion, and maintain it in a perpetual loop, such an ability was nothing short of miraculous. Orochimaru analyzed, but it's still not quite enough. Expecting this tier of power to completely bypass future sight is a bit too idealistic. While the sensory impact of the data flood was sufficient, it only sustained itself for a brief instant, it lacked the capacity to loop automatically and endlessly. Furthermore, the chakra consumption was astronomical. Tanbo couldn't maintain it as a passive, constant aura around his body without wreaking absolute havoc on his immediate environment and everyone around him. According to their joint research, the fundamental fabric of the universe was woven from information. If an excessively massive concentration of data manifested in one place, it would inevitably warp reality, rewriting the localized data structure of the world itself. This truly was a monumental feat of ninjutsu engineering. This technique behaves quite similarly to the Uchiha Izanagi, Kabuto observed. Or perhaps, it's more accurate to call it a heavily modified variant of Izanagi. Judging by the underlying execution method and the resulting data metrics, the core philosophy closely mirrored Izanagi. Both utilized in release to materialize intangible concepts into reality, thereby rewriting the future. Based on their years of collective research, Izanagi's ability to alter an unfavorable future was achieved precisely by manipulating and restructuring the world's localized information. The user would force a specific parameters into the informational field and execute the jutsu formula according to that design. The direction is absolutely correct, Orochimaru noted. The real challenge now is whether he can successfully refine it into a passive technique that remains constantly active on his person without causing collateral damage to his surroundings or other people. What an absolute anomaly Tanbo was, to be capable of independently engineering a jutsu of this caliber. His sheer genius easily rivaled the ninjutsu development capabilities of the second Hokage. However, the pivotal factor remained whether Tanbo could execute the subsequent phase of development. After all, he couldn't realistically spend every second of his life actively casting a high-level ninjutsu just to counter a conceptual threat like future sight. Kabuto countered, Lord Orochimaru, if your hypothesis holds true, then even a single deployment of this ninjutsu should theoretically disrupt future sight, wouldn't it? After all, an enemy utilizing future sight must actively observe the timeline. As long as Senior Tanbo deploys this technique right after the enemy initiates their vision, it will inevitably corrupt their observation. It was akin to a footrace from the starting line to the finish. The finish line represented the chosen future, Tanbo was the runner advancing toward it, and the enemy utilizing future sight was a trailing competitor trying to peer ahead. To predict the future, the trailing runner had to look at Tanbo. The moment Tanbo activated the technique during that window, the enemy would slam face first into the informational wall. We can tell him to stand down now. This is exceptionally well done, Orochimaru said, his eyes gleaming. Such an extraordinary talent for Genjutsu, frankly, even Uchiha Itachi falls a bit short in comparison. By this point, Orochimaru no longer held Itachi's ocular prowess in high regard, he felt it had hit its absolute ceiling. In fact, even the current Sasuke didn't quite measure up. Working alongside Tobitake Tanbo was an endless stream of fascinating revelations, the man constantly unveiled concepts that defied Orochimaru's existing knowledge base. The Otsutsuki biology, his current ninjutsu formulas, his strategic intellect, and his political acumen were all utterly peerless. Orochimaru couldn't help but wonder what other eccentric ideas Tanbo would conjure up in the future. The looming threat of the Otsutsuki was turning out to be quite magnificent, forcing so many hidden marvels into the light. A brief moment later, Tanbo materialized right in front of the laboratory control screens. Well, how do the metrics look? Did we hit the target parameters? Tanbo asked immediately. Deepening the development of unlimited void strictly required the feedback of external observers. Even if he utilized shadow clones, their insights couldn't match the analytical genius of Orochimaru and Kabuto. Different perspectives naturally birthed different streams of logic, and he had no intention of underestimating these two prodigies. After all, he didn't possess a cheat system, he was simply a bit smarter than average. Orochimaru responded, it's flawless. The next step is converting this into a permanent, passive seal on your body that remains perfectly harmless to bystanders and the environment. That was the true bottleneck. Understood. What about the sealing formula you've been working on? Any breakthroughs? Tanbo nodded, turning his attention to Orochimaru. His own information-based ninjutsu was merely one vector of attack. The alternative approach had to rely on fuinjutsu. Sealing arts were an absolute staple of the shinobi world that would never truly fall out of style, no matter the era. Orochimaru smiled confidently. "I found a solid lead, and substantial progress has already been made. I've named the technique the World Sealing Barrier. It is a fuinjutsu designed to completely isolate and sever all incoming and outgoing information from a designated space. Your own technique provided the vital inspiration for it. Since the universe was built on information, completely blocking the flow of that information would logically blind any attempt at future sight. That was Orochimaru's core methodology. Furthermore, by a stroke of brilliance, this information-blocking seal could be integrated into standard laboratory settings to serve as an ultimate anti-interference shield for delicate experiments. However, it's currently just a baseline prototype. It still requires extensive fine-tuning." Kabuto suggested, "Lord Orochimaru, perhaps we could utilize the reanimation jutsu to summon the second Hokage. His expertise could drastically accelerate our progress." Kabuto's current moral compass generally forbade him from disturbing the deceased. However, if temporarily disturbing a historical figure meant securing a safer world for the upcoming generation of children, he felt the trade-off was entirely justifiable. Hearing this, Tanbo let out a soft chuckle. He liked the idea in theory, but he highly doubted Tobirama would be particularly thrilled about being pulled back to work. Furthermore, constantly interfering with the Pure Land might trigger unforeseen cosmic repercussions. Orochimaru casually waved off the suggestion. "There is no need. His methods have already grown outdated, the resources we possess right now are more than enough." He no longer felt the need to rely on the dead. To him, the figures of the past, whether it was the third Hokage or the second, were ultimately failures of their respective eras, and failures could only offer insights born of failure. "All right then, I'm heading out to pick up Kigo from school. I wonder if he made any new friends today," Tanbo said with a light smile before vanishing from the laboratory in a flicker of movement. Watching him leave, Kabuto turned to Orochimaru. "Lord Orochimaru, Mitsuki has already successfully synchronized his chakra with nature, achieving a natural sage body from birth. I wonder how large the disparity is between him and Kigo." Orochimaru chuckled warmly. "Mitsuki is the ultimate culmination of our synthetic research. However, Kigo is capable of independently generating his own research breakthroughs. Mitsuki cannot be compared to Kigo in that regard. That boy is undeniably one of the sharpest minds I have ever encountered in the field of scientific research." A soft, proud smile graced Orochimaru's face. The synthetic life form he had painstakingly engineered had finally entered the world. He was officially about to experience parenthood. Chapter 413, Chapter 413, First Grade. Chapter 413, First Grade. At the Konoha Ninja Academy. "Teacher, this question is entirely too simple. Do you have any harder problems?" Tobite Kigo asked listlessly. Good grief, he thought. Is the curriculum at the Ninja Academy truly this elementary? Staring at the mathematics sheet on his desk, alongside fundamental questions regarding basic chakra refinement, Kigo could only sigh. He had already mastered these concepts years ago. Ah, just another day of desperately missing the laboratory. Kigo was thoroughly speechless. Back in the lab, he could freely consult with his mentors, Lord Orochimaru and Kabuto, or brainstorm complex theories with his father. There was an endless array of fascinating phenomena to research there, sparking his absolute interest. Here at the academy, however, he felt a stifling aura of foolishness washing over him from every direction, and that included the instructor standing at the podium. It wasn't that Kigo considered them utterly useless. Rather, whether it was the dialogue of his classmates or the basic trivia shared by the teacher, he felt the entire intellectual pool of the shinobi world was being profoundly bottlenecked. How could human knowledge stagnate at such a shallow depth? His father had rigorously taught him to remain humble, to be open-minded, to be. To heck with all that. This academy lifestyle was simply agonizing. There was no complex intake of new concepts, nor was there any practical output for his intelligence. It felt exactly like submerging his brain into a stagnant, bacteria-ridden pool, completely rotting away his intellect. He glanced around at his classmates, who were currently staring at him with expressions of unbridled adoration. While it admittedly tickled his ego a tiny bit, he vastly preferred his old routine of conducting experiments in the research facility. Besides, what was a bit of civilian adoration worth? Could it secure the funding for a single research project? Hearing Kigo's question, the academy instructor was momentarily rendered completely speechless. Fine then, just focus on your independent studies. I'll make sure to minimize my interference from now on, seriously. The teacher's internal monologue groaned at how prideful the boy sounded compared to the average child prodigies. Captain Tombo's son is truly a handful to deal with. However, considering he was merely a rookie instructor at the school, he figured it was best to maintain a highly professional demeanor. Kigo nodded politely. Thank you. I appreciate the undisturbed study time. With that, he reached into his desk compartment and pulled out a massive, heavy textbook. The title emblazoned on the cover read, The Multifaceted Research and Practical Applications of Photons. Wow, he's so incredibly cool. His seatmate, a cute young girl, immediately swooned into a total fangirl upon witnessing Kigo's casual demeanor. In fact, a significant portion of the girls in the classroom had already become his devoted followers. Kigo's smooth, unbothered attitude carried an undeniable, brilliant charm. To dare to speak to an academy instructor in such a manner was unheard of for a first grader. Naturally, seeing almost all the girls directing their starstruck gazes toward Kigo made a few of the boys highly disgruntled. They silently resolved to give him a thoroughly stern lesson once the recess bell rang. Before long, the shrill bell signaling the end of the period echoed through the halls. A crowd of children instantly bolted out of the classroom to play. Kigo-kun. I have a question, could I ask you for some help? While Kigo was deeply immersed in his advanced studies, a young girl approached his desk, holding out her textbook sheepishly. Kigo closed his massive book and let out a soft sigh. Go ahead. Frankly, it must be quite a struggle for you all to stumble over such elementary data. Yes, it's about this concept. Regarding the shape transformation of chakra, how exactly do you? The little girl didn't care about his slightly arrogant tone at all, focused entirely on her query. Her thirst for actual knowledge seemed remarkably genuine, indicating she hadn't merely been drawn to his desk by his good looks or charm. Hey, I want to ask first. Let me go first. Suddenly, several other girls swarmed the desk, waving their notebooks and shouting their own questions. However, the problems they were presenting were concepts the teacher had already covered thoroughly and clearly during the lecture. Kigo was thoroughly exasperated. The first girl had at least presented a concept the instructor hadn't explained perfectly, but these other girls had clearly skipped paying attention in class just to use questions as an excuse to talk to him. In an instant, he realized the first girl actually possessed some commendable qualities, unlike this horde of unmotivated, foolish children. The first girl found herself aggressively shoved to the rear of the crowd, clutching her notebook with a bewildered expression. Her question hadn't even been fully answered yet. Tsubaki. Why are you even bothering to ask him? You could easily just ask the teacher, a group of boys shouted angrily as they marched over, noticing Tsubaki standing isolated at the fringe of the crowd. Tsubaki replied matter-of-factly, because the teacher is busy right now. Kigo-kun possesses an incredibly vast knowledge base and is highly proficient across multiple disciplines. I want to learn from his example. What's the point of studying that boring stuff? The Shinobi Tool Intelligence course is where the real action is. We live in a peaceful era now, we need to keep up with the times, one of the boys countered proudly. Tsubaki argued back, the Shinobi Tool Intelligence course still requires a foundational understanding of various academic core subjects. The great director of the Scientific Technology Development Bureau once stated that, the pursuit of absolute truth is the ladder of human progress. No knowledge is useless, there are only useless people. If you want to excel in developing shinobi tools, you need to study properly first. The Shinobi Tool Intelligence course was reportedly a newly introduced discipline at the academy. It primarily focused on teaching the basic mechanics required to develop scientific shinobi tools. In the current era, a massive portion of modern technology was constructed using scientific shinobi tools, while only standard, everyday appliances fell under regular engineering. We don't care about any of that right now. Let's just thrash Kigo first. He's way too arrogant. The leading boy stated, intentionally rolling up his sleeves to show off his sturdy shoulders. His companions nodded in fierce agreement. Their fathers were all active shinobi, and they themselves had already mastered basic chakra refinement and utilization by the age of 5. They were absolutely confident they could flatten Kigo. Move it, get out of the way. They aggressively shoved the girls aside, forming a tight perimeter around Kigo's desk. What do you think you're doing? We're going to tell the teacher, the girls shrieked in protest. They had finally managed to get close to the handsomest boy in class, and seeing this group attempting to initiate a physical fight made them furious. The boys smirked. By the time the teacher gets here, we'll have already beaten Kigo to a pulp. Don't you worry, hee. The leader had planned this out carefully. Ever since school started, Kigo had constantly hogged the spotlight, which irritated him immensely. No matter how hard he worked, nobody ever noticed him, yet Kigo managed to command the entire room with just a few condescending remarks. Staring at the hostile group, a series of mental question marks flashed across Kigo's mind. You intend to physically assault me? Based on the sheer data disparity between our respective combat intellect, bloodlines, and theoretical knowledge, the probability of you securing a victory is mathematically indistinguishable from zero. While he was primarily trained as a scientific researcher, that by no means implied his combat ninjutsu was lacking. Based on his calculated metrics and their baseline data, there was no logical scenario where a few standard 5-year-olds could best him. Cut the chatter. Eat my iron fist. The leading boy lunged forward, throwing a heavy punch straight toward Kigo's face. Shoo! With a casual flick of his wrist, Kigo projected a highly localized strand of chakra that resembled a piece of elastic bubblegum. It adhered instantly to the absolute weakest leverage point beneath the boy's advancing foot. Then, Kigo gave it a sharp yank. The boy's center of gravity was violently disrupted. Losing his balance entirely, he crashed directly into one of his companions standing nearby, sending both of them tumbling hard onto the floor. Kigo had intentionally calculated the trajectory to ensure they completely avoided the sharp corners of the desks and kept their heads from striking the ground directly. Bam. Ow, ow, ow. That hurts. The two boys groaned in pain, their bodies aching from the sudden impact with the wooden floorboards. Kigo looked calmly at the remaining boys. That was a basic application of chakra shape transformation, which is supposed to be a core subject here at the academy. Have you managed to master that yet? Do you still wish to continue this engagement? The remaining boys stood completely frozen, staring in absolute shock. Since when could chakra be utilized in such a fluid, versatile manner? They were only in the first grade. Most of them had barely managed to grasp the rudiments of tree climbing. Wow. Kigo-kun is incredibly amazing. That's the technique mentioned in the advanced second grade textbooks. Bungee gum, it's rumored to be an extreme variation of shape transformation on par with the Rasengan. How on earth did Kigo-kun execute it so casually? The young girl's eyes shone with immense adoration. He was simply too cool. Even the girl named Tsubaki stared at him with profound awe. It turned out Kigo-kun had already advanced his studies to such a terrifyingly high tier.